And so, if you will, we'll bring our meeting to order. Ms. James, would you call the roll of City Council?
The Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Alex Heath.
Present.
The Honorable Linda J. Davis.
Absent.
The Honorable Samantha Hudson. The Honorable Hattie Portis Jones. The Honorable Ulysses.
Received some requests from the to see where there are opportunities. We reached out to some members of the public that often attend council meetings and HOA leadership members to talk about what their top priorities were. And it wasn't, a large number of surveyed, but they were kind of key stakeholders who are typically will call and ask us to address certain items. So we just surveyed them. We asked, what are your top priorities? And of course, safety is one of those top things. Trees, housing conditions, trash, abandoned vehicles, and then a sense of belonging, vacant properties, and neighborhood amenities, which is typical for most communities. We then asked them to kind of drill in of the areas that are key for code enforcement, things like overgrown grass, animal control. Which of those areas are the top areas of concern? And of course, after looking at all those, we looked at our code, we looked at information from the field data that our code enforcement officers bring in every month in terms of the number of violations, areas where we see a concentration of particular issues, and begin to really figure out from a policy stance, from an ordinance stance, and from a sort of day-to-day operations, how can we better serve the public? How can we do what we're doing more efficiently? And so today we're going to talk about a couple of things. One of those is noise and construction hours. We'll also be talking about inoperable vehicles. We are in the process of rolling out a new program. Since grass cutting is one of those #1 issues in the city, we wanted to create an opportunity for the general public to have access to tools and resources where you can come free of charge and grab some tools, or if you are working with a faith-based community or you're a senior and you need some help, to maybe partner where they can come get the tools and help make sure that the grass stays cut. The other thing we're looking at is a update to the corner visibility ordinance. We realize that while overgrown grass is something that's easy to see, corner visibility was one of the areas in our ordinance that was missing regulations. So we're proposing some changes for that. And then, of course, inoperable vehicles. A lot of our regulations are somewhat dated as it relates to code enforcement. So looking at what other cities are doing, looking at operational, what we can do better, we have come up with some suggested changes. And then International Property Maintenance Code. Pretty much every city in Georgia has the minimum standards, but we want to look at how we're enforcing it, look at policies and procedures related to that, working with our legal department. And then we're also proposing a multifamily inspection program. We spoke to some cities up north who have a significant amount of new development. As we know, along 74 and in certain areas of the city, we're going to see a lot of growth. We just want to make sure that that growth and the longevity of that asset to the city is maintained, so that's another thing we're proposing. And then, of course, the noise ordinance. Construction hours are, it's happening everywhere in the city, and we wanted to make sure that our construction hours were on par with other cities, but also keeping in mind with market conditions, all the new developments that we're having. One of the things I want to bring your attention to is that our current noise ordinance was written in the 1980s. We were a much smaller city at that point. We did not have nearly as much construction happening, so it made sense at the time to make sure that the hours were limited to weekdays, 7 to 6. We are proposing a modification to that. There's some members of the audience here who were interested in particular because they have construction projects that are happening in the city. This is on par with all of our neighboring cities. Instead of the weekday 7 to 6, we are proposing some changes to construction activities and deliveries Monday through Friday, 7 to 7, Saturdays, 8 to 5 p.m., and then, of course, no construction activities on days like New Year's, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, Memorial, and other holidays that are recognized by the city. So that's probably one of the most significant changes that we're proposing. Knowing that our noise ordinance is a bit dated, that was one of the areas of particular concern for some of the folks that are working in construction. And of course, nothing on Sunday. So that's the proposed changes. We're also looking at a more clarified way to be able to measure sound. We want to have some language in there regarding, a code enforcement officer can have an object to go out and measure sound. That way it's not just one neighbor against the other. We have something a little bit more concrete to go after. Another item that we're looking at is stop work orders. Of course, if someone is doing construction in the city without a permit, we go and tell that person, hey, you have to get a permit, stop all work. And in most instances, it's not an issue. Stop work, they go out, they get the permit. We just want to make sure that that language is also in the ordinance, that they cannot remove the stop work order. Because in instances like this, if a stop work order has been issued, we want to make sure that contractors, subcontractors, everybody is aware that there's something at this site that needs to be addressed. And so we just want that language in there. Probably one of the most, I won't say controversial, but one of the things that we hear a lot of complaints about, I think roughly about 150 of our violations last year were dedicated to inoperable vehicles. And it wasn't in one particular area. It is, in various, especially in our older communities where there are inoperable vehicles. And we just kind of want to tweak the way we address that. We do have some language in there. We are proposing to really kind of break that down a little bit more in terms of defining it and also talking about the storage. This is where I really need as much feedback from council as we can get. This is a shift. I believe from a policy stance, it was a practice in prior years that if a vehicle was covered and you had a carport, it was sufficient. If that is the will of council, we can certainly do that. But for other cities, they've required that in residential areas that it has to be enclosed. And this would have an impact on stakeholders throughout the city who have vehicles that they're working on and may not have a garage. So I want to be very transparent about that. That's probably, of all the items that we're discussing, that's going to be one of the items that really does impact, because I said we had, quite a few violations related to inoperable vehicles. Any feedback you have, questions, concerns, things that we can tweak, we're open to that.
Any member of council have a question? Yes, sir, Mr. Smallwood, go ahead.
I'm looking at this, yes, because I do know this is a huge issue. Now, I do see it says, hold on, let me read where it was about the license. But now, is there language in there about up-to-date tags?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And
That's the
now-
last point. It says,
Oh, yeah, valid license plate attached here too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let me ask you this, because I know this has been something that I've seen. What is the law, or what kind of teeth do you have? Because I've seen people get around, this is backing the vehicle in, and it's not shown that there's not a valid tag on there, but I've heard some code enforcement say, well, we can't actually walk on that property, but is there something maybe that over time, if you've seen that car sitting there for 7 years, and it's basically growing dust up under it and rusting, but it's backed in, and so how would something like that be addressed?
Section D has the new provision
Okay,
that says when a public officer of the city has reasonable cause to believe that there is an inoperable vehicle being unlawfully maintained, allowed to exist on any premises within corporate city limits, such officer may enter premises at a reasonable time for the purposes of inspection. It also gives the property owner the right to say, you can't come on my property.
Yeah.
Then we would work with our solicitor to then make sure we've met all requirements to be able to go and inspect and make sure that that property owner is aware of when we're coming.
perfect, thank you.
Mr. Whitmore, go ahead, sir.
Just a follow-up to what my colleague was just talking about, and I think Chief would probably have a tad bit more information, because over the years, there has been occurrences where we knew that there were inoperable vehicles sitting in driveways, and back then where they couldn't see the tags, but I think even at that time, PD could not even go on that property. Is that correct, Chief? And so by putting the teeth in there and getting our solicitor or our city administrator on board to make sure that we have grounds, rights to go and do that, because it really affects the neighbors when they have those inoperable vehicles, especially when it turns into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So I think that's good. So thank you for that, Mr. Smallwood. In addition to that, I think I saw the section where you was talking about construction. Okay, can you flip to that? Now, and your proposal is going to be proposed changes 7 to 7 and Saturday 8 to 5, which I think is great. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. In Durham Lakes, sitting on the board and sitting in with my architectural review committee, we did allow those contractors, while they were building, to actually work on Saturdays. We know that we have weather conditions and everything else and deadlines to meet, the whole gamut. So by being flexible with that, I think is a good thing. But I see we stopped on Saturday. I'm glad to see that. But yes, that's something that we probably should have looked at some time ago. But I always thought it was there since we were doing it in Durham Lakes. But now that we're bringing all of our rules and everything together, ordinances, it makes sense, and I think it's going to be a good thing. I just caution one thing. I know there's been occasions on a Saturday, they show up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and all I hear was tat, 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 roofing guys. All right? I got out of bed and went and said something to them and made them stop, along with loud music. All right? Those are annoyances that we should not have to endure. And I know they like playing music while they're working, but maybe they need to put those earbuds in and do what they need to do. But other than that, I think it's great to make these proposed changes, and I think it's going to benefit not only us as the citizens with new construction and businesses, but it's going to help them stay on target with their deadlines as well. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? As it relates to the, excuse me, and I apologize, I was trying to make an adjustment. When you was talking about vehicles being covered, if vehicles are, I guess, in driveways being covered for X number of years, I guess my question is and people cover their vehicles for protection, especially if they don't have garages, they put covers on them.
We would need to modify the ordinance if that is the will of council. If you want the carport, so if somebody has a carport and they have a vehicle that they're working on and it's covered, that's a little bit different because it's not completely enclosed. So I just kind of need to know what your preference is on that. Because if it's covered, then technically, if you could still see it, it's not enclosed.
Okay.
We do have a lot of folks that have classic cars that like to work on those cars on Saturdays.
Okay. So members of the council, does anyone have a perspective about that? I brought that up because I'm sure that's going to become a concern. Go ahead, Mr. Heath.
Yeah, well, the way that I've seen a lot of people that do have the vehicles that, from the past, 60s, the 40s and 50s and all, that usually they do have like a canvas cover over them. Most of them do, simply because of the fact they don't have a carport or anything. And to me, it looks great to me for just as long as it's covered.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Any question?
We can certainly add that provision to it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing this clearly. The covering, because we also, the classic cars is one, and then there are luxury cars that are parked in driveways that are covered. So are we pushing to have it completely covered, or you need to see some identification tags?
We can add a provision in there that requires that it be covered but not have a fully enclosed garage, if that's sufficient for council.
Mr. Whitmore,
Yeah,
your
I guess
perspective?
y'all know more about this.
No, go ahead.
I'll let the man talk about cars.
Go ahead.
I just drive it. But let Whitmore go. I want to know what he got to say.
Go ahead, sir, and then I'll come back to Mr. Smallwood.
So, as you are well aware, and code enforcement is well aware, You have a lot of people that are gaming out there.
Exactly.
So what does that mean? I'm gonna put a cover over my vehicle, but I see all these oil spots and antifreeze and everything else on the driveway. That's gaming. We have to be smarter than the gamers. All right? So whatever we put together, I mean, because if it comes out and just spells out, okay, you can have your car covered, they're gonna go out there and cover their car, take the cover off, continue working on it, inoperable vehicles. All right, and we have to be sticklers on inoperable vehicles because, again, there are some people out there that use their cars for parts. I think you identified that in your presentation, all right? And that's a problem. That's a problem because then in our communities, that's all they see. So whatever we put together, it has to be something that is going to give our code enforcement officers a little more latitude and flexibility so that they can really make sure that these cars are operable. They should be started, should be able to put it in drive or reverse and move it. You know, there's other things that you can do that spells out what is considered an operable vehicle. Now, and again, as my colleagues already stated, as far as the 20-plus year-old vehicles that we drive around for parades and other things like that, but they keep those vehicles fit, operational, running, the whole gamut. All right, I think that's a different part of those that are trying to abuse the laws that we have on our books. And again, I think we just need to be creative with the type of wording that we put in there, and also giving our code enforcement officers, and if needed, our police officers, the added teeth that they need to catch these individuals, citate these individuals, give them so much time to get it off, remove it, whatever case may be. But without that teeth in there, we're gonna have the same old, same old.
Now I know what I'm gonna say, thank you. So with the operational part of it, I think what he said is right. The policy should be specific in stating that this is what consists of an operable vehicle.
Okay.
I believe that the policy should also recommend or state that the code enforcement or whoever is going to be will ask for verification, and that they have to provide verification. If they're not home, a notice is left with all of the steps that they need to do to verify.
Okay.
With a deadline date, I wouldn't go past 5 days with that before a fine is applied.
Okay.
Does that work? Anybody agree with that?
Typically, we do 5 to 10 days of notice, and then it goes to citation.
Yeah.
That's the will. We will do so.
I will say 10 days doesn't work because again, you have those gamers out there, all right? So history has proven. They reach that day before, they start doing things, and they call and ask for an extension. And it has been granted, all right? So the gamers are out there, they know the game, they know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with, all right? But if we stay strictly adhered to whatever policy, ordinance that we put out there and eliminate the gaming.
Is that 5 business days?
I think 5 is a very reasonable.
I think so as
amount of
well.
time. Oh, 5, I would say 5 business days. So then if the weekend come, they got the extra 2 days. I mean, so that's giving them 7
It's a
days.
little grace.
So it's a little grace. Who said that? You
I
said that?
said that.
Oh,
Yeah.
your voice echoed over there. I'm looking at the code enforcement supervisor. But yeah, I think it works because now you have that latitude.
And that's
Especially.
that's a great medium between the 10 and the 5. Mr. Small, will you?
No, I mean, that covered it. Councilwoman Hudson made it specific, the policy specific, and I'm just of the thought of Councilman Whitmore about the gamers because, you know, they'll just cover it up and still keep getting away with it. So, yeah, sounds good to me.
And let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, for and I'm sure other city governments have this going on. I go down to Putnam County a lot, and in particular, that's about an hour from here. Long story short, There's a gentleman that I go by periodically to check on, and his next-door neighbor literally has 20 cars. 20 cars in the yard. And I just one day finally asked him, I said, does code enforcement ought to come out here and just periodically check? He said, oh, no, that guy's running a garage. He just brings used cars. And I just shook my head. I said, okay. I said, well, that probably wouldn't work closer to Atlanta. So.
And that
go ahead,
brings
sir.
up,
I just
That-
wanted a little clarity. You mentioned that if it is operable, meaning you can actually move the vehicle back forth. In that instances, if it's operable and you can move it, but it does not have a tag, are you saying that it should, or just across the board, everything has to be enclosed?
tags have,
Yeah, we
in my
need a
opinion,
tag.
it has to be tagged as well. They shouldn't be driving the vehicle in this state without insurance, right? You can't get a tag without insurance. So it should be. And if they have a vehicle that's new enough or old enough that needs to get their emission testing, that's all part of the process. So we're actually following state and adding what we have locally.
Okay.
Okay.
But I do have another question. Because as you know, we do have the movie industry in the state of Georgia. And we know in a certain part of the city, they have about 10 to 12 cars that is actually not on their property, but on the street. Operable, but probably should be parked someplace else. I'm just asking, what is your thoughts and opinions in reference to those type of areas of the city?
If it is on the street, then it is the police department. If it's on private property, then code enforcement handles it.
And Chief, may I, please? And you probably have received calls about this already, I'm sure.
Yes, sir, I'm
correct?
familiar.
So where do we stand from a city's perspective on those people that have a business in a residential area with multiple cars that's on the street?
So there's not currently a cap on how many cars can be parked on the street if they're legally parked, meaning on the correct side of the road facing the flow of traffic.
And that's
There is no
cut
limit.
and dry, that's it.
Yes, sir.
Any member of council? Mr. Heath, Mr. Smallwood? Ms. Hudson? Okay. Next.
Regarding the corner visibility or the community toolkit, are there any concerns with that? I just wanted to bring your attention to that, because that would be a new resource for the city. I take absolutely no credit for it. This was the idea of our assistant city administrator, who made sure that this happened, and of course, council providing the budget. But what it would be is a free resource for residents.
When you say a free resource for residents, you want to break that down a little bit more, please?
Sure. Did you want?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. So last year while at ICMA, I sat in on a course in reference to code enforcement. And one of the ideas that came from that was instead of fining our residents, why don't we as a city provide a resource? And so the thought behind it was to get a trailer, work with some of our local businesses such as Tractor Supply, Home Depot, or Lowe's to see if they would donate tools. So if we have a resident that does not have a lawnmower, but they received a notice of violation for overgrown grass, they could come, essentially borrow a lawnmower from the city, cut the grass, and then return it. That way we're not mandated that they actually purchase one or solicit landscaping services, but it can help if someone has to stain a fence and their fence needs to be stained, or if they don't have a tree trimmer and their limbs need to be trimmed up some. Just another avenue for our residents to come get a tool that they need so they can get into compliance as it relates to code enforcement.
Can I, go ahead. You go ahead, nigga. I had a question after that.
Okay, so now I'm predating myself now, all right? My military days, we had an opportunity to go and check out equipment, do what we need to do and return it, okay? That's dealing with morale and welfare type of issues. I guess my question would be to you, budgetary-wise, what are you looking at? That's number one. And number two, I know for a fact that there is interest in people adopting a street. That's where I think we should be going, adopting a street, and even in the communities, okay? I'll use years ago in Durham Lakes. I had a young lady that was over her head. Mailbox knocked down, grass all over the place, hedges overgrown. Me and a couple of my neighbors, we went and we took care of it because she was getting fined and she couldn't even pay the fines. So if we can promote adopting the street, adopting a neighborhood, and it's not just the residents. I think we have enough businesses in the city that will buy into that, because we always talk about how we want to keep our city beautiful. We don't want to drive down the highway, even though we know going down the highway that's covered by GDOT, and people drop trash, whether it's intentional or not, we go and we pick it up.
Correct. So code enforcement and Ms. Brookins actually took the idea a step further. What they are in the process of rolling out is the Love Thy Neighbor program. This will allow, in partnership with local churches and organizations, if they want to, I guess, adopt a resident who has a notice of violation, they can come out and perform the services that are needed. For instance, this happened a few months ago. There is a property right next door to the church off of East Broad, a few doors down from Old Sonoya Road. It's a white house. There's actually a church group that came in for 1 week on a mission, and they literally painted the exterior of that property through the Love Thy Neighbor program that was put together through code enforcement. And so we're working with local businesses, local organizations, nonprofits, and our churches to help roll this program out.
Great. Don't forget the ROTC, all right, with the VFW, all right, and any other organizations, charities, whatever, that will be more than happy, I think, to work along those veins. So thank you for thinking outside the box.
And I do know our Main Street coordinator is actually working on rolling out the Keep Fairburn Beautiful program so that local businesses and organizations can go back to adopting our streets, just to make sure that our roads are clear.
Ms. Dustin, you had a question?
Yeah, I think the only concern that will come up with me is the borrowing of equipment and returning it. How do we make sure that the equipment returns? Then you have damages to the equipment and all of those things, because it almost seems like that we may have to dedicate quarterly to utilizing staff to cut so that we minimize liability, because we are purchasing this equipment with the taxpayer. And it's not like we're gonna have staff outside every day going up and down Fairburn, mowing people's lawns. And then with that being said, we have to minimize the number of times that that resident used that service so it can be equitable across the board. So, yeah.
And so we do have policies and procedures that we're looking at. We're going to send them to legal to review. There are other examples of similar programs. One in particular in Red Rock, Texas. They have a similar program to this one that they've rolled out, and those were some of the questions that I've asked the director of that department. And so we do have a little insight on how that equipment is returned and then how it is maintained to ensure that residents aren't injured while utilizing it. So it's a whole process and policies and procedures that we will roll out that they'll have to sign off on as well. Okay. We can share those with council once they're complete.
Because she actually covered the area I was going to ask about, and that was about accountability. Let's just be as candid about this. What happens? You're going to have some folk that's going to take our equipment and they're going to bring it. I'm sorry, they'd rather steal it than
Yeah.
excuse my vernacular. But and so they figure if you're not going to ask for it back, you know, why would I bring it back? But and so that was my only concern about an equipment. It's been whether it be, like I said, I think it's an awesome program. I've actually seen that done at another city way outside, actually near Savannah, that had that program, and they said it was phenomenal, but they were very serious about actually, if you steal their stuff.
Yes, sir.
Just one
I'm
other,
sorry,
one other
go ahead.
question.
And I'm
I,
sorry.
I already know you have a thought of what type of finances we're gonna be looking at to roll this program out. Because you're looking at various types of equipment, right? You're looking at lawnmower, rakes, and so on and so forth, or where are we at, or what are you really thinking about?
Actually, we were able to get most of the equipment already. The issue we ran into was really about storage, and so we were able to get a trailer so that we could haul all of the equipment to the site. So along with working with neighbors who need the equipment, also working with the faith-based community, our partners like STRAC, we would be able to pull the trailer to the site so that it could be utilized at that point too.
So we're gonna have, well, let me ask the question, I'm not gonna assume. So it sounds like we're gonna have staff, one staff person that's going out with the trailer and the equipment?
In most instances, yes. So with our code enforcement officers, more than, and most often, they know exactly who's having those issues that are most prominent. And in a lot of cases, those are our underserved communities. Those are our seniors. Those are people who don't necessarily have the resources to do it. Just to kind of give you a holistic view, our income levels are continuing to rise, but we also have a significant amount of poverty. And what typically happens in community is that you have certain areas that are doing really, really well, and then you have certain areas that are not doing so well. And people have the best of intentions but lack resources. This program is geared toward meeting people in the middle, but also holding folks accountable. So they'll have the notice of violation. In some instances, when we did the Love Thy Neighbor program, people were headed to court. And by the time it got in front of the solicitor and or the judge, they were able to resolve it because we were able to partner with the faith-based community to get that person in compliance, which is ultimately our goal, especially if you're talking about a senior. The goal is to make sure that, everything is cleaned up at the end of the day.
So my last and final question in reference to this, we're looking at using a staff member possibly, but
All our
that's
code
not gonna
enforcement
be, I'm sorry?
All our code enforcement officers will be involved with the program.
Okay. I'm talking about taking the trailer out with the equipment. Okay? That's not gonna be code enforcement officers, is it?
Yes. So we actually worked with our streets department to make sure that we had the equipment to be able to pull the trailer as well. And our streets department, they were involved in making sure that the trailers were inspected, understanding what equipment was there, because they actually use some of this equipment when they're doing more of the heavy-duty items in the city. So working with Ms. Higgs and her team, we were able to make sure that they had eyes on everything and to make sure that our vehicles were able, because code enforcement drives trucks, so they can, and we have some members of our team who actually have experience in trailers and landscaping as well.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm clear. All right, so we're not taking equipment away from general services
No,
that
sir.
handles the beautification of the city.
No.
We're not taking staff away from general services that works during the
Absolutely not.
day. This is gonna be done during working hours or after working hours?
Typically during working hours.
On working hours. Now, I'm gonna ask another very pivotal question here. You already spoke earlier about permits not being pulled, and we know when that happens, people do that work on the weekends, okay? Has there been any consideration for a rotation of code enforcement so we can still cover the city on the weekends and catch some of these violators?
Yes. We are working on weekend hours. We plan on rolling that out in the spring once we have this program moving forward as well. And we just have to make sure, because one of the things when we look at code enforcement, we don't look at just the sort of common everyday items. When you're doing a stop work order and somebody's roof is open, that's not just code enforcement. We also have to make sure that there's somebody in permit who can issue that permit at an expedited rate, because if you have a roof and you get a stop work order and it's raining, you could, lead to damaging of somebody's home. So we just have to make sure that holistically our entire department has a policy in place to cover not just code enforcement out issuing the stop work order, but making sure that we don't inadvertently harm a property owner who just didn't know.
So
Yes, we will have weekend hours.
And that falls back into play, things that we've done some years back with code enforcement, so that's going to be a plus. And I also like to say thank you, because you guys kind of thought everything through, and you have answers to all the questions that have been brought forward to date. And that tells me that you're not looking at just putting something together and then it's going to drop a month, 2 or 6 months down the road. But we're trying to put together a very strong program that will continue for years to come.
And I think one of the keys to sort of looking at any program is boots on the ground. So I also want to give credit to our code enforcement manager, who's done a fantastic job of bringing those partners to the table to address some of these issues in a very proactive manner. Meeting with the churches, meetings with STRAC, making sure that everything for the pilot program went off without any issues. That was completely Mr. Fleming's. That's to his credit, and the entire team.
Who is Mr. Flemings? I mean, nobody really knows him.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, he breaks things.
Break it, you bought it.
We break it, then we fix it, right?
There you go.
So, is there anything specifically you wanted me to?
Just introduce yourself. I'm sure people are looking at you on the camera right now.
Okay. So, for those who don't know me, my name is, excuse me, Fleming, Londell Fleming. I'm the code enforcement manager for the city of Fairburn. A little bit over 2 years now, I've been in place. I have a team of 4 officers that work with me on a daily basis. We're looking to grow the department. That includes community initiatives. That also includes what Ms. Brookins spoke of, which is creating partners to work with the city, and also making sure our day-to-day activity is robust as it needs to be.
So I'm going to add one more comment, if I may, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that comment is, I have called you on a number of occasions in reference to a couple of areas within the city once I receive the calls. And I'm going to say to the citizens out there, code enforcement is not going to see everything. It helps when we have our citizens that's informing us of things that they see. Just like we have that fix it, see, click, fix, that can also be utilized for code enforcement as well. So I would encourage you to do so, because they do look at that program and they do go out and they act immediately on it.
Yes.
But I know I received about 3 different comments from citizens about things that they saw in their community, and within 24 hours, you and your department, you and your crew were on it. So I'm just going to publicly say thank you, sir.
Code enforcement is reactive and a proactive force. Doesn't work without the community getting involved, because like you mentioned, you can't see everything. One of our strengths as a department is that we're actually able to get to anywhere within the city within about 10 minutes, and typically able to get on a case within about 24 hours. Sometimes it may take 2 days, depending on if they are tied up with other objectives or jobs. But one of our strengths is being able to get to the actual problem, get some sort of resolution to it, or speak with the resident and have it pretty much complied with within the next couple of days.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Heath, you had a question?
Yes. The problem that I have with this is, I don't know if you've ever let a relative borrow your lawnmower or anything, and you get it back and it's all torn up.
Yeah.
I mean, they just, people don't take care of stuff that don't belong to them. What is your thought on that? I mean, is there some liability to the people that are actually going to be using the equipment to do repairs to the equipment if they tear it up?
Good question. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, good question. So what we actually have done as of late is that we've put together a SOP in regards to how we're going to actually operate the program itself. One of the things we're considering in there is if the property or if the equipment is damaged, are we going to fix it, or if we're going to repair it? But we do have actual wording in place to remove it from active service and then to move on with the tools that we currently have at hand. The actual registration of the program is going to be first come, first serve, and make sure that we're not overbooking any of the actual residents that wants to take advantage of the tools at hand. But we are working through the actual program, and some of it's going to be trial by error, see what sort of response we actually receive from the community, and then we'll kind of know in terms of funds, also in terms of how we're going to make sure that the program stays afloat, what would be the best way forward.
Got it. Okay, well, thank you.
Quick question, kind of along the line he just asked. A person comes in and that doesn't have the consideration as the average person in this case. I realize you've got lawnmower, I realize you've got hedge cutter, tree cutters. My concern is there a limit to what one person can acquire so that you don't end up basically cleaning up your whole property with all the city equipment and nobody else gets a chance to use anything?
So yes, there will be a limit, and so what we're doing is taking the program and tailoring it based on the needs of our residents.
Yes, ma'am.
So once it's completely rolled out, we'll be happy to do a work session to council that we can actually show off the trailer that we have that'll be branded City of Fairburn, and then also educate the residents on how the program will work, and then provide an overview as we prepare to roll it out for you.
Gotcha. Mr. Whitmore, go ahead.
So just like at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they're checking out that equipment, they're showing how to operate that equipment.
Correct.
And Home Depot or Lowe's is making sure that it has the oil that's required so we don't burn out the engines and everything else.
Correct.
And then also, there's a pre-check and a return check.
Correct.
Should be. So you're looking at doing the same thing. So we
Yes,
can
sir.
identify equipment that went out in good repair
Correct.
that's coming back in bad repair.
Yes, it's
Then-
our goal to make sure that every piece of equipment has an asset tag, so that we know exactly what that serial number and that piece of equipment was that was lended to that resident, and that is the piece of equipment that is returned. So there will be a full checklist that will have to be completed as well, pre-checkout and post-check-in.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
If there are no questions, that was our presentation.
Very good one, too.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out if there's another, okay? Mr. City Administrator, you got anything you want to add or anything else next?
That was the only work session item.
Okay. All right. Members of council, we can take a break until start at 7 o'clock, 17 minutes from now. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got 7 o'clock. At this time, we'll bring our meeting to order. Ms. James, would you please call the roll of council?
The Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Alex Heath,
Present.
Honorable Samantha Hudson,
Present.
the Honorable Linda J. Davis, absent.
Absent?
The Honorable Hattie Portis Jones,
Absent.
the Honorable Ulysses Smallwood,
Present.
Honorable James Whitmore.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. At this time, I've asked Pastor Durris Cotto, First Baptist, please come forward if everyone can. Please stand. For invocation.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for your many blessings to our city of Fairburn. Thank you for everything that you've done, everything that you're doing. Lord, and we are grateful for everything that's going to continue being done in our city. I pray for our Mayor Avery, for City Council, for officials. Grant them wisdom for key decision. Grant them justice and confidence in what you've called them to do, your Lord. Give them the ability to work together in harmony for the betterment of our city. Thank you for our police department. Thank you for our fire department, Lord. And we just beg you, Lord, like every night, that you protect them as they put their life on the line, Lord, to protect us. We love you. We thank you. And we ask for this in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of council, at this time, can I entertain a motion to adopt the city council agenda to include the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is made by Mr. Smallwood and second by Mr. Heath. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Okay, I need,
no, aye.
okay. Motion carries.
Okay. The first item is a presentation of Bucket Truck Rescue Award, Utilities.
Okay.
Good evening, esteemed mayor and council.
Good evening.
The Electric Division would like to show recognition to our apprentice lineman, Hayden Waters. Hayden recently attended the first Electric Cities of Georgia class of Ground Safety and Operations course. One of the most important practices taught is bucket truck rescue. This exercise involves leaving a set point by the truck, running up the platform to the bucket, getting in it, raising it up on a 35-foot pole to a 200-pound training dummy, retrieving it, lowering back to the ground, and then performing CPR. The average time is 1 minute and 44 seconds. Hayden set a class record time of 1 minute and 9 seconds. Any lineman, including myself, would feel very confident with Hayden and his safety abilities watching out for our lives on the line.
Yeah, members of council, can we stay?
We're gonna get another one.
Can I get your last name, please, Hayden what? Waters. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, before you read the public comments, I just wanted to be known that Serena Noel is on as the city attorney. She's on the,
Members of council wanted to make sure you know that Ms. Noel is actually on the, Serena.
Okay.
Is actually online. You can actually see her. Actually, you can see her in front now. Okay. All right, at this time, we'll go to public comment. 30 minutes will be allocated for public comment. Each person shall speak, will be limited to 3 minutes. However, a speaker may transfer his or her 3 minutes to another speaker. No speaker shall be permitted to speak for more than 6. In the event of more than 10 speakers, the time limits will go down to 2 minutes. Issues raised at this time are generally referred to the city administrator for review. Responses will be provided at a later date. How many speakers do we have, Ms.
we
James?
have 2.
2. Go ahead and call our first speaker.
E.J. Brooks.
Good afternoon.
So glad you get to see me, and I seeing you.
Well, I saw you.
Likewise.
Yeah, you know how it is in this crazy world, you know. You never know day to day. Might need somebody come rescue you with a little CPR or, you know, some electrodes or something. But I'd like to share with you some information. First of all, I am not the enemy. I am your neighbor. I can feel sometimes that there's a little disparity of treatment with different people. You know, a consultant can come over here and like interrupt the flow of the agenda. An advisor, people can just, you know, have their way. And some people can't catch a break or get any help. For example, instead of saying, the right way and the wrong way, here's the right way you can make a presentation to the council, neighbor. It is, let me hinder you. So I don't know why the disparity of treatment is alive and well, but I'd just like to share with you that as council people, you have, and especially the mayor, Mr. Mayor, you have what they refer to, I believe, as minstrel duties. And that is, 1, to protect public health, 2, to protect the environment, and 3, to protect the citizens' rights. So that's basically all I wanted to cover. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for your comment.
Next speaker is Samaruel Fears. Got it right.
Good evening, Mayor, councils, and staff.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very nervous when I speak, so I'm going to read my public comment. I wanted to begin by saying I absolutely love my city, the city of Fairburn, and all it has to offer. I love the growth that is taking place and encourage development with strict zoning regulations, especially in our specific districts that are embarked for development and growth, such as the Highway 74 overlay and the downtown LCI area. However, and keep in mind these were written a while back. I've been trying to get to the meetings, but I haven't due to other things. However, I was a little disappointed and appalled after learning about the KDB development rezoning variance back in November. I know this is not about that right now. And if I'm not mistaken, I know that they had 2 initial meetings. And after calling and speaking with Ms. Brooks and Planning and Zoning about the signage on Milam Road, the request was explained. From my understanding, KB Developments wanted to rezone from commercial to PD. Initially, my first concern was, why did I not receive any information about this development, and it is almost in my backyard? Then I was reminded of the newly updated notification system for residents that is only within 1,000 feet. Secondly, my concern was that the developer had already had a couple of meetings with only a few attendings. It is my opinion that that is a portion of the reason that many of the developments seem to not have much input from the residents. It could possibly be due to residents having no idea that there's a potential development. Although the signs are posted, they are almost impossible to read, and there's little to no information online about the specific request. I think I've already talked to Ms. Brookins about that. According to my research and speaking to Ms. Brookins about being able to find, that information online. One of my reasons for attending the meeting tonight is to ask for the city of Fairburn to help me, a resident, understand the protocol and process for requesting an additional update to increase the notification of any development requests to residents from 1,000 to no less than a 1 mile radius, if not more. It is my understanding that the city will be responsible for the cost to send that information out, I guess, for mailing. However, if is it possible for the developer to assist with the cost of these notifications, or could the city send out notifications over 1,000 feet, 1,000 square feet electronically? I've attended several public input meetings about the development of Parks and Recs, the LCI area, completed surveys about the development sent by the city, and plan on attending the new comp plan session. But I wanted to learn more about how to assist with rallying and informing neighbors and myself on becoming more actively engaged with the development of the city as Fairburn. Some additional points that I have is that with that increased notification development, I would like for a page to be put, like you said, put a page online where people can go online and click and see this is what the request is, this is what the variance is, or the rezoning request, and then also attach a tag with the map.
Time is about, I apologize, ma'am.
How much? I'm done.
You're out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is that conclude our speakers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this point, ladies and members of council, you have before you the city approval of city council meeting minutes that commenced on February 10th, 2025. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Next item.
The next item is a public hearing, remediation services and M2 text amendment. It is a request for mayor and council approval of the text amendment request to establish regulations for remediation services.
Okay.
The item before you is a text amendment not proposed by staff. The applicant is here. They're requesting to add a provision in the heavy industrial zoning district. The applicant is HEPCO. The property owner is proposing to let their tenant at 121 Robert Street, which is on M2 Heavy Industrial, operate a office-based facility that coordinates response for environmental emergencies, that includes remediation, cleanup services for environmentally contaminated buildings, sites, or natural disasters, fire cleanup, and similar services. The applicant is proposing trucks owned or long-term leased by the business used for the provisions of the services are allowed to be kept on site. They're also asking that trucks be included with more than 2 axles and employee vehicles.
Okay.
Got a little ahead of myself. There we go. There we go. So this is the site where the applicant is proposing that we have the text amendment. It became brought to staff's attention because of the location, and so we looked at our heavy industrial zoning district and all the uses that are permitted by right. Some items do require use permit. The applicant and anyone looking to do any type of use in a heavy industrial area, we try to be aware that there are residential areas that back up to heavy industrial in our city limits. And so we want to make sure that whatever provisions are proposed, that there are adequate, not necessarily conditions, but requirements and regulations where you can balance the heavy industrial along with if there were residential surrounding it. The applicant requested that all commercial vehicles must be parked on asphalt, rock, or gravel. Drivers are not allowed to sleep or refuel on the premises. If such vehicles adjoins a residential property, then the boundaries shared would have to have some sort of screening. In this instance, that is not the case because of the location. Staff is recommending approval. I know there might be some questions related to sort of the nature of the business. The applicant is here and available to answer the question so you can understand from start to finish how that process works and what items they would be proposing to go on site. This is, of course, a text amendment, which means if it is approved, it would be approved for any of our heavy industrial zoning districts.
Okay, let me do this, members of council. Let me open the public hearing. At this time, members of council, can I entertain a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
30 minutes.
And at this point, 30 minutes will be allotted for a public hearing. Members of the public, if there's anyone here that's wished to speak in support of this item, would you please come forward?
Thank you, members of the council. My name is Kirk Felstuhl. I'm with Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. We're here on behalf of HEPACO. We've got Sue Anelli with us from HEPACO. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want you to kind of understand that this is a text amendment in an M2 district. I want to start by saying that this is really more of a contractor's office. There are there's nothing associated with hazardous waste that are going to be conducted on the property. There's a 10,000 square foot office building where the administration takes place. We've currently got 18 trucks, 14 of which are pickup trucks. There's a couple of what are called vacuum trucks, and then there's a roll-off truck, like you might think, that carries the large dumpsters at commercial businesses, but they're all three-axle vehicles. So there would not be any sort of hazardous materials or hazardous waste stored on the site. What happens is that when they go to a job, they do the work, the materials are offloaded off-site at an approved facility. The vehicles are all cleaned before they get back to the facility. So in terms of the vehicles, it's really just HEPACO trucks that are parked at the facility. There's not going to be any fueling that takes place. It is really just similar to sort of a contractor's office. The issue came up during the business licensing phase, and the staff did not see a use that was specifically authorized under the zoning code. So the staff worked very cooperatively with us to come up with a text amendment that would that they could support. And what we know is important is to communities is they don't want hazardous materials stored. They don't want something like a truck stop. And so we worked with the staff to make sure that we have a set of restrictions that will work for this text amendment. And although there's a provision for this use if it's adjacent to residential property, this use is not adjacent to residential property. It is surrounded by other M2. So with that, I know we've got to finish the public meeting, and then we'll reserve any time we need to, and happy to be here to answer any kind of questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else here wish to speak in support of this item?
I'm sorry?
No, I'm speaking to the public. Is there anyone else here wish to speak in support? Okay. Is there anyone here wish to speak in opposition of this item?
Ernie Brooks, 33 Cole Street, Fairburn, Georgia. Our new neighbors have been in their property in this location for about a year. And currently, they've already violated by having these trucks. I'm assuming that's what the text amendment's about. There was a tractor-trailer truck there. As the gentleman said, there's other heavy equipment. I'm concerned that, first of all, you know that intersection at Roberts Road, the trains already hit several tractor-trailer trucks because they can't clear. Once they cross the track, they're stuck. And the train, man, it's moving. And here recently, we had a train hit a tractor-trailer truck. I'm concerned about the residual leftover in the trucks that have picked up hazardous material. And just to share, just for your information, the property owner, AG Tripp, stands for Angelo Gordon and Tritton Real Estate Partners. They boast on being vertically integrated, leading alternative investment firms managing $73 billion in in investments, and they have 650 employees, with 200 employees specializing in investment. They're investment professionals. So these guys are traded on the stock market. They're an international group, and right off the internet is here of some of the materials that they process. And they are governed by, just to give you some history, they're governed by the what is called the TSCA. It's mandated that the EPA, it stands for Toxic Substance Control Act of 1976, when Gerald Ford was the president. It gave the EPA from cradle to grave. They grandfathered in all the chemicals that were currently in the country. However, there has been chemicals like paint thinner and other chemicals that are too hazardous that they've taken off. There's been 8,000 new chemicals that have been brought forth to the marketplace. So some of the things is, of course, soil that's been soil into contaminated water. I don't know if you saw, a week and a half ago, Cobb County was doing maintenance on their water treatment plant and released 40 million gallons of raw sewage. And there's a reason why. Development's on the north side of the river. Everybody wants to use the water instead of the south side. PCB, flammables, acid, oxidizers, poisons, pesticide, lab packs. Think about all the hospitals, and this is their regional headquarters. I believe they moved from Charlotte, North Carolina to Fairburn as their Atlanta regional headquarters now. So, they're probably, and just to take you, do you remember when over there on going to Fayetteville, when you cross Oakley Industrial on 92, the water treatment plant there, and there's a place there called Clean Earth, and they brought in some material from Alabama to process it, and the whole city of Fairburn smelled like green onions, and it was some type of chemical. I don't know if you remember that, but anyway, universal waste. But there's a lot. Think about human waste from hospitals regionally. Aerosols, cylinders. Anyway, there's a lot of hazardous material. And just to share my personal opinion, I have a fear with Chamber Barrel Company being right next door that they're actually going to be containing hazardous material in barrels and then transported them to the dump. Now, that's just a fear that I have, that those of you who are on the council can remember when the dump first came forward, everybody was against it, and we were told the dump will not expand, the dump will not be, well, the landfill, didn't call it the dump, the landfill will not be any higher than the pine trees that are currently there. Well, now the landfill is way higher than the pine trees, and you guys just gave or passed 4 partials to expand the landfill. So I know there's a bunch of science, but this is big business. These are the power hitters.
Sir, that's not accurate.
That's not accurate?
That's not accurate, absolutely not.
I'm sorry, what? There has not?
No, sir.
There hasn't been 4 partials that were granted to expand the landfill? Oh, I stand corrected. Sorry about that. I misspoke. Was under the wrong impression. But so unfortunately, like I say, I've witnessed because the Fairburn Feed and Seed, the Fairburn Printers, the little nightclub bar area that Mr. Couch owns right there. There are residents, believe it or not, if you're familiar with that area, there are little tiny houses socked away around there. Maybe not right next door, but there are residents in that area of the community. So I stand opposed to this because I'm fearful that the residue and simply because I think that this is an investment for people to make money. And if you remember, President Trump was in a dump truck.
Is anyone else here to speak in opposition? Seeing none, sir, you get an opportunity to come back for a rebuttal.
Fortunately, we're not opening a landfill. This is an M2 district where we could propose something which we have no interest in that's much more intense than what we're offering. This is an office that, effectively an office that has pickup trucks and 3 or 4 three-wheeled, 3-axle vehicles. As I'd mentioned, the administrative work is done at the office. The work is done off-site. The vehicles are cleaned before they come back, and the hazardous materials are offloaded before they come back. There are, in terms of traffic, we've got 22 employees and 14 trucks. Like I said, you would know better than I what you could do on a site like that for M2. This has no manufacturing on it, and so we would request your approval. And again, thank the staff for working with us.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, can I entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Members of council, you have before you a request for council to approve the tax amendment, request to establish regulations for remediation services. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. Any questions or comments by council?
Discussion.
Who made the second?
Mr. Heath.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Hudson.
I just want to be specific and ask questions that's pertaining to hazardous waste. This amendment is not going to accommodate, as staff says, with the conditions to approve, no hazardous waste will be transported in any type of way. There's not going to be any hazardous waste transported to or residue left over. If the trucks are being dispatched from this location, or are they just parked at this location?
So, come on.
Yeah, so they would be, this is the administrative office too, so they would be dispatched from the location.
They would just be dispatched from that location. So any cleanups or hazardous waste will be done on site at that location out of Fairburn, unless Fairburn has something that you all are called to. Is that correct?
It will be done off-site at certified facilities in terms of the offloading of waste and the cleaning of the vehicles.
Okay. I think that was, and staff is recommending approval with the conditions. Can you read the conditions, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, there we go. I put my presentations out of order. That's my fault. Okay. All commercial vehicles must be parked on asphalt, gravel, or, there we go. Good show.
There it is.
All commercial vehicles must be parked on asphalt, rock, or gravel, subject to the approval by the city engineer. Drivers are not allowed to sleep or refuel on site. If such facilities are adjoining any residential uses, there must be a screening. Under no circumstances shall there be any storage or treatment of any hazardous material. We also had a provision in there that says it has to be a certain amount of feet from any landfill facility, so you cannot have the office where you are having your trucks adjacent to or within a distance to a landfill. So because we have a landfill on site, we wanted to make sure that there was that distance requirement. And the ordinance specifically states, and it's not a condition, it's a requirement, so nobody can ask for a waiver on this, and they have to meet all of these.
Were there any parking permit requirements a year ago?
Parking permit requirements, no. I believe we looked at the history of the site, and for at least the last 10 years, as far as the Google Maps, there's always been commercial vehicles there. There's always been some sort of storage or heavy industrial uses on that site.
Okay, so there's no parking violations?
Not currently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Seeing none? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Next item.
Next item is KBD rezoning and concurrence variance. This is a request for mayor and council approval of the concurrent variance and the rezoning request with the enclosed conditions listed.
Hello again. The applicant is requesting to rezone the parcel from C2 to PD Plan Development. It's located on Milam Road. The applicant is here and available to answer questions. They're also requesting a variance to reduce the parking requirement. That is something that a significant amount of developers have asked for, especially as it relates to multifamily. Having reviewed the variance conditions, we are recommending approval of that variance to reduce the concurrent variance to reduce the parking requirement. The rezoning, the applicant has provided a traffic study. There were some concerns from the general public related to transportation in that area. The applicant did provide elevations and a site plan. One of the probably primary concerns, along with the number of units, is really traffic congestions. I'll let the applicant explain the traffic study and how the Highway 74 expansion may help relieve some of that issues. One of the things I do want to bring your attention to is the comprehensive plan. Our current comprehensive plan does support the request. It does calls for mixed-use development, specifically multifamily development, 4 stories. So it does comply with that regulation. The applicant did hold some community meetings. I believe at most it was about 34 attendees from the community. We have heard from various stakeholders. We did have one letter of opposition that was included as a part of the packet for council to be able to understand some of the concerns from the community. Having looked at all of those standards for rezoning, we are recommending approval because of the alignment with the comprehensive plan. The applicant has agreed to do some commercial development. There was some modification in the site plan, and I'll let the applicant kind of explain to that. Instead of the 5,000 that were originally a part of the development, the applicant is proposing 3,000. Less commercial development would provide some additional traffic relief, although with the number of units, there will be some issues with the level of service. The applicant will have to work very closely with our engineering team to work on some modifications to that area if this item is approved. Again, staff is recommending approval because of the alignment with the comprehensive plan. The traffic study was provided, and the applicant is available to answer any questions. We have a number of conditions. This is typical with most planned developments, including things like you can't have gas stations and limiting the number of commercial items that are part of it. Also, we have some conditions related to the architectural design standards that are on par with all the other developments that we've seen in the area.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing, and then, members of council, can I entertain a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Sir, well, at this point, I guess in this case, let me ask you, just Ms. James, just for proper procedurally, I could allow him to speak, or do I need to, in this case, in support of the project? Or do I?
He's speaking in favor, so.
Okay, yeah.
that's who's speaking in favor, I'm sure.
Okay, see, I'll just do it that way. Okay. First, let me just open it up. Members of the public, anyone that here that wish to speak in favor, you can please come forward, okay? You'll come up after that gentleman. Go ahead, or with him.
Mayor, Council, my name is Stephen Jones. I'm with the law firm of Taylor English Duma. I'm here today on behalf of the applicant, KBD Fairburn. The applicant is also the property owner. Accompanying me today on behalf of KBD Fairburn is Mr. David Harris. He's the D in KBD. KBD has owned this property for 19 years. Contemporaneous with their acquisition, the property was rezoned to GC. Present zoning now, if you'll see, property fronts on Milam in what is now Renaissance Parkway. It is set just slightly to the east of Highway 74, and it's 14.22 acres. If you'll see here, I'm sorry, I said GCC 2 is the present zoning of the subject property. If you'll see here is an excerpt of the zoning map. You'll see you have some C2, but predominantly in this corridor, You have, and we'll talk about this momentarily, you have C2 and commercial uses along Highway 74. Stepping down further as you move east and west, almost one parcel back from that highway commercial, to multifamily uses, which you'll see in red and the turquoise color, and then planned development, which are mostly mixed-use multifamily in the yellow. Consistent with that, your comprehensive plan, as staff noted, has the entire corridor of Highway 74 from 85 to the Fayette County line, painted in purple. And what does that purple mean? Well, that's highway mixed use. And in a little bit, I want to show you that this comprehensive plan, and I know the comprehensive plan is very important to this council, has been effectuated very artfully through your staff's recommendations, your Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations, and ultimately this council's decision. We see that if we look at an aerial of this site and of the Highway 74 corridor, you will see up and down 74, that highway commercial in the C2 and other PD districts, flanked then to the east and west by multifamily mixed-use developments, which are highlighted in red. There are other mixed-use multifamily developments in this corridor. There's one to the north, right at the top of your screen on the east side, but that's in the city of South Fulton, so I didn't feel that was a fair one to highlight. But it does show the development trend up and down Highway 74. Highlighted in yellow is the subject parcel. And again, all those red circles are mixed-use multifamily developments, consistent with the development that's being proposed by the applicant. Of note, to the north of the subject property, those two red circles are the Dillon and the Oslo, which also front on Renaissance Parkway, and the southern one is also a mixed-use multifamily development like the one proposed by the application. That's mixed-use multifamily with an outdoor component, an open space component, a commercial component, and then, of course, the predominant multifamily component. Those two closest circles to the west on 74 are the Vita and the Portman mixed-use multifamily developments that this council approved within the last 6 months. And those have, I believe, a commercial component in one and then a co-working component in the other. The only open green space you see in that corridor besides the subject property, and mind you, the ones circled are under development or recently zoned and will be developed. But the only other stuff you see is the mostly floodplain area to the north of this property, which is city-owned just to the south of the transmission line. So that's why we view this property as the last parcel to effectuate that comprehensive plan and that undeniable zoning trend that you see coming south with highway commercial fronting on 74, step down to mixed-use multifamily, and then finally step down to single-family attached and single-family detached. I want to talk a little bit about the history of this parcel. Again, KBD has owned this parcel for 19 years. Despite the history of the parcel, they're not in the business of growing pine trees. They're in the business of real estate, and they bought this property for that. The property has been actively marketed for that entire time to be purchased as presently zoned C2, but there have not been any off-takers as it's presently zoned C2. But I'm glad to announce that we do now have an off-taker for this site. We've got Middleburg, and accompanying me on behalf of Middleburg Communities is Mr. Sean Roscoe. He was involved at his former company with the two developments to the north, the Dillon and the Oslo, which also front on Renaissance Parkway. And his company's under contract to acquire the property subject to this rezoning. I think that goes to show that after 19 years, the market has produced finally a viable purchaser for this property. But the market has shown that this property should and needs to be rezoned for a use which is consistent with other similarly situated parcels, those vast number of red circles which have received entitlements consistent with the one that's being requested. Which brings me to, and Sean will talk briefly about Middleburg in a moment and what they have to offer and why we actually think this community is not only consistent with the other multifamily mixed-use developments in the area, but takes it a step above and raises the bar even further. Here's the concept plan we have. You'll see that road headed towards the right side of your screen is Milam. The one headed to the left is Renaissance Parkway. Here's an overall 2D site plan. You can see in the northeast corner of the property, we've got this conservation area. That's an existing farm pond that's been on the property since KBD acquired it. And it was a pond that was used by the owner when this was under single ownership or a single-family agricultural tract. We're going to conserve that. The plan is to install a mulch walking trail around it, put a dock out there, make it a nice amenity feature for the residents. At the northwest side of the property, where you see that grade area along Renaissance Parkway, that's the commercial component that's being proposed, and that commercial component is consistent and tends to mirror those commercial components with the other mixed-use multifamily developments on the east and west side of 74 that the council's recently approved. So let's look at the renderings that we have. I think these give a better feel and understanding of what's proposed other than the 2D site plan. This is the intersection of Milam and Renaissance Parkway looking northeast into the site. And so you can see we've got the buildings fronting along the roadway to give a characteristic feel consistent with the other developments on Renaissance Parkway. As you head up Renaissance Parkway, this is an emergency access for fire, EMS, or egress in the event of a fire for residents. Moving further north, you'll see the amenity area. This is a typical clubhouse. Sean can speak more to those amenities. His company would include in there, but clubhouse, pool, resort style, things of that nature. And they've got some really cool amenities themselves, so I don't want to steal his thunder there. Moving further north on Renaissance Parkway, this is the main entrance into the development. You can see that prominent building towards the back and then flanked by the other buildings in the development. Then as we move further north on Renaissance, this is the commercial component. And that's underneath the building, generally same feel that with the other mixed-use multifamily developments in the city and along the 74 corridor. Again, we're just really trying to continue that development trend on this last parcel in that corridor, effectuating the goals and vision of the comprehensive plan. Moving interior to the site, this is that existing farm pond that we're going to preserve with a mulch walking trail around. This is looking interior to the site from the northeast corner. You can see that really a lot of the buildings will have prominent views of this water feature, this existing water feature. You can also see the dock. The proposal is to create a dock there for the residents to utilize. And then just another 3D overview of the site. I want to talk now about the present C2 zoning. Again, for the past 19 years, we just haven't had a viable off-taker. But you can do a few things in C2. You can do big box retail. You could do truck rentals. You could do a Home Depot or a Lowe's. You can do batting cages. You can have a car dealership. You can have a grocery store. KBD would have welcomed all these, but there just hasn't been a purchaser for those, despite 2 decades of trying. But I think that is a good thing, given some of the concerns that we've heard about this rezoning request, namely that's traffic. So we commissioned a traffic study. And what does that show? Well, we use Moldino and Wilburn. I don't know if you're familiar, but they do a number of traffic studies in this jurisdiction and surrounding jurisdictions. But a big box retailer with about 90,000 square foot under roof, think grocery store with some tenant spaces or a Walmart, things of that nature. You get about 8,300 trips a day. That's 8,339 trips a day. With the PD development that's proposed, the residential component, just the residential component, would add only 1,652 trips. If you add in that commercial component, that's only another 3,200 trips. And we're proposing to cut that 5,700 square feet commercial that was accounted for in the traffic study and that we initially proposed down to 3,000. One, because I think that fits Middleburg's model more. and two, because that will reduce that traffic number in more than half. So if you're at 13 now, let's just call that 700. When you add that to the 1652 that would be generated by the residential, you're looking at about 2,300 trips. So you're looking at, let's call it about 30% of what would be developed by, or the traffic that would be created by a C2 development. So your rezoning to PD actually downzones this property and puts a use which would generate less traffic than if it was developed consistent with the zoning that's presently on there. I also want to talk about the GDOT's project, which recently got underway. It's got this really long string of numbers, but 7841 for short. And I think it started earlier this year, and when the proposal is to widen 74 down to Milam, which will alleviate some of that traffic, heading all the way up to the interchange. When you get to the interchange, proposed at the interchange, I believe is a diverging diamond, which also heavily reduces and alleviates traffic congestion. That will also help with the traffic concerns in addition to the reduction in the use. And then secondly, we see the parcels to the north of this developing soon, consistent with the market trend to develop the Highway 74 corridor, at which point that property owner will complete the connection for Renaissance Parkway, which will provide a thoroughfare for residents to access the businesses that are further north on Renaissance Parkway. With that, I want to introduce Mr. Roscoe. I believe Sean's got a few slides.
Morning, or good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. It's great seeing y'all. Is there the next round of slides on this? Okay.
Can I get your
I'll start
name?
by just introducing myself.
I was going to say, sir, can you state your name?
Sean Roscoe.
Okay.
It's great seeing y'all. I've been in front of y'all a few times for Solstice, the Dillon, and Oslo rezonings with my previous company, South City Partners. Back about 3 or 4 months ago, I left South City and now am with Middleburg Communities. And we're a fully vertically integrated multifamily development company, meaning we develop, we manage, and we construct everything all in-house. We typically own from 5 years to 10 years. We're long-term owners is what that would be considered. And we build roughly 12 to 15,000 units per year, all Class A across the entire East Coast. So anywhere from Washington, D.C. down to Orlando. And so one of our hotbeds now to focus on is Atlanta. And it's clear why we should focus on Atlanta. I mean, the growth, especially south of 20, has just been tremendous over the last 10 years, really. So I'll dive in once we, here we go. So I could read through this all day. Like I said, we're in 8 states. We in-house develop 12 to 15,000 units per year. We also help other developers get their developments underway. So we're over 20,000 units per year. We build all Class A product, and that's your typical clubhouses with your resort-style amenities and commercial kitchens and sitting areas, micro offices, conference room. We've got package rooms, dog spas. I mean, really anything you could ever ask for. Fitness centers that are more outfitted than the one that I pay for. Our units are, 9-foot ceilings, balconies, all stainless steel appliances. We've got some pretty cool unit features at Middleburg in particular that we include with every apartment clubhouse and unit. One of those being Wi-Fi internet connectability throughout the entire apartment complex. So if you hop on a Teams call or Zoom call in your unit and you decide, oh, I want to go to a micro office in the club room, you stay connected to the Wi-Fi walking across the property. It's pretty cool. We also have, like I said, the package room. It's all a private amenity where You get your package delivered, and when it's delivered, you get a text, and you're the only person that can go unlock that room and grab your package. And that's fully secured with cameras. And then our camera system and all of our access control throughout the entire community is logged and tracked. So it is extra safe. We know who's entered this door at 9:35 p.m., and we likely have camera footage of that happening. So it's a very secure community. And then with Middleburg in particular, we also have electronic door fobs that are controlled by that same system, as well as the hallways themselves are not open corridor. They're all closed condition corridors, which is not something that any other developers have done here in Fairburn so far. They're all access controlled, so if you somehow get into the property, you still can't get into the building because you've got to have key fob access. We also do Wi-Fi thermostats in the units, so if you like sleeping with it at 60, but you don't want your unit at 60 during the day when you're at work, it'll, at 8 a.m., whatever you set it to, 8 a.m., it starts cranking up to 72 and just lets it, be more efficient. So we do some really, really nice things in our communities. Some of our design principles, we've got the HVAC up on the roof, hidden from view, so it's not down on the ground when you're walking around the community. And some of these things I already touched on, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartment units. I've touched on the community amenities. I mean, we've got grilling stations and outdoor pool and fitness and sometimes volleyball and pickleball. It really just depends on which community we're building where, but I mean, every Class A amenity you could ask for. Interior features I went through. We've got the digital smart locks and backsplashes and balconies, 9-foot ceilings, everything that I have delivered in Fairburn previously, plus extra. But I just want to also touch on some of my previous experience in Fairburn. So I first came down here for rezoning of Solstice back in 2014. So that was the first rezoning. And then shortly after, a few years after, we rezoned the Dillon, which was 2018-ish, 2017-ish. And then got Oslo rezoned in 2020, 2021, and we got final CO on Oslo in 2024. So it's really a 10-year period. And over that 10 years, Fairburn has just seen all kinds of growth, obviously. I mean, half of these city council meetings are dealing with the growth that Fairburn has. So in that time period, and I'm not saying that correlation and causation are the same thing, but in 2014, the median household income in Fairburn was $41,000. Today, as of the end of 2024, median household income was $99,000. So what we saw over that period is that when we first started developing these units at Solstice, the median household income was in the 70s. And so when you build places for people to live, where there are 160,000 jobs within a rush hour 20-minute drive, it just gives somewhere for these young professionals to live and grow within the community. At that same time, home values have over doubled. They went from 160 to a little over 330 today. So we've seen a lot of really good growth, and I'll finish with Oslo today. The median household income is over $105,000 per unit. That's per resident median household income, and the median income needed to live there is a little over $70,000 per year. Meaning these folks, these young professionals, are making good expendable income that then they can spend in the city where they live and invest. 60% of the Oslo residents are between 22 and 40, and 20% of the residents are actually small business owners or self-employed. So this is an area where you've got these young, hungry folks that are gonna live in Fairburn and decide to stay here, and their career is gonna blossom within this community. So I will finish with that, and I guess open it up for questions. Thank you.
I'm still in the public hearing phase, so if there's,
Sorry.
go ahead, sir. You got 5 minutes.
Mayor, Council, we just wanted to thank you for your time and consideration of this project. I just want to reiterate again, we think it's the final piece that effectuates the vision of the comp plan and the consistent decisions that we've seen following that comp plan. To that end, staff recommended approval with conditions. The Planning Commission recommended approval with conditions, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with conditions. We'd ask that you also, consistent with those recommendations and your comprehensive plan, follow staff's recommendation and vote to approve. On staff's recommended conditions, we would ask for 2 minor tweaks, and that's under D1, and that's just to be consistent with that 3,000 square feet of commercial. Right now, it says for every 125 units, there shall be 3,000 square feet of commercial. And that would be 6,000, over 6,000 total. We'd like that to say by the time we deliver or get a certificate of occupancy for the 125th unit, we'll deliver 3,000 square feet of commercial. So it just sets it at that 3,000 we discussed, but it also gives the city guarantee that the commercial will be built and operational prior to reaching half occupancy of the development, if that makes sense. And then on D9, there was just a typo. It says exterior material shall be a minimum of 30% and 20%. We discussed with staff that's supposed to be 20. Just as we were in the back and forth discussion of it. It says 30, it should be 20, consistent with the numbers. But with those two, we fully support and consent to staff's recommended conditions. I would ask that you vote consistent with that recommendation and the Planning Commission's recommendation. If I may, Mayor, may I reserve the remainder of my time for rebuttal?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
At this time, is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition of this item? Yes, ma'am.
Still have 3 minutes in favor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak in favor of it? Got 3 minutes left. Seeing none. Anyone that wishes to speak in opposition, come on up.
Good evening again. I'll be reading again. I wanted to start by saying I am in opposition of the KB development rezoning variance proposal at the corner of Milam and Renaissance Parkway. I do believe that the developer's claim that the property is not viable for commercial use may be misleading, and I would respectfully like to present the following points for consideration. First, the developer's assertion that they are unable to find viable commercial tenants and all the commercial places. I know in the one meeting they said that all the commercial places around Atlanta are closing down. Ruby Tuesdays and TGIF Fridays. But if you look at all of our neighbors, we look at Noonan, they're building Ashley Park. They're developing components down, like retail components down there. If you look at Sharpsburg, they've developed sit-down commercial buildings. If you look at Tyrone, they are right now developing commercial buildings. If you go over to Peachtree City, they're developing commercial buildings. Union City and the city of South Fulton, they are all developing commercial buildings. So I would suggest that it is not, it is still a viable reason to still stay in the C2, in the C2 commercial zoning that it is. These developments demonstrate that the commercial spaces continue to thrive and are in demand, even in our region. Given these neighboring areas' success, I believe that the most profitable approach for the developers would be to prioritize the construction of the commercial component rather than reducing to a minimal space with uncertain demand. Furthermore, while the comprehensive plan may be viewed as a guideline, I believe that it should not be treated as an inflexible requirement. When the developers acquired the property over 20 years or 19 years ago, they understood the zoning requirements and the nature of the property they were purchasing. Now, instead of respecting the established zoning regulations, the developers have chosen to propose a plan that fails to incorporate the significant community feedback. The residents of Fairburn have made their concerns clear. At that meeting that he discussed, like I said, there wasn't too many people at the meeting originally because we didn't know. But at the meeting that they talked about, there were over 30 people, community members online and in person, that voiced their opposition of this project. Yet the developers have not offered any significant revision to address those concerns. Instead, they have continued to present additional data to argue against the community input. This suggests a lack of genuine willingness to collaborate and respect the needs of the residents. While I understand that the current zoning would allow for the development with apartments and a commercial component, I would prefer to see a plan that incorporates quality commercial spaces beneath the residential units, similar to the successful models seen in nearby developments such as Trillis. These areas have successfully integrated high-ceiling retail space with residential development, creating a vibrant, accessible community. The residents of Fairburn deserve the same quality of life and access to the modern amenities. How much time do I have? Oh, okay, good.
Take your time.
I'm sorry. Additionally, the proposed impact on local traffic is a major concern. With it only being one proposed entrance on Renaissance Parkway, the traffic congestion is already a serious issue. We currently live off of, I didn't tell you where I live at, but I'll tell you that later. We currently live at that corner of Milam and Renaissance. Well, we live on Milam, further down, and the traffic is horrific. Like, you sit at that light forever. There have been multiple accidents. At the corner, my son's friend flipped a car. So it's just, there was an accident the other day in front of my subdivision. There is no way to get out. And then when that area is blocked, we have no way to get home. When I was trying to get home, there was an accident on my street. I had to go all the way around through Fayette County just to get home, to then find out I couldn't get home on the other side because it was that bad. So there's no way for us to get home. And so let me get back to my reading so I can stay on track. In addition, with there only being one proposed entrance on Renaissance Parkway, the traffic congestion is a serious issue. The addition of another large residential development, particularly with the nearby fire department and other apartment projects, will only add to the problem. The current traffic bottleneck at Milam and Highway 74 intersection has already resulted in multiple accidents, and the developer suggests that a retail store would generate even more traffic, would suggest that the retail store would present even more traffic is unconvincing. A retail development would provide residents with valuable shopping and dining options, whereas additional apartments would only contribute to the existing traffic issues. All of the residents that were in that meeting and virtually all agreed that they did not want another apartment complex. They all said that they would rather have a retail box store or something of that matter that would benefit the community. In addition, I proposed the proposed reduction in parking spaces from two parking spaces per unit to 1.5 should not be approved. Many young professionals, particularly those targeted by the development or the developer, are likely to own multiple vehicles, and adequate parking is essential for maintaining the quality of life of the residents. Reducing parking spaces requirements could lead to overcrowding and diminish living experiences, while also suggesting a strategy to minimize the number of apartments at the expense of the residents. A couple of other things I would like to point on is I urge the developers and you guys, the decision makers, to reconsider the proposal, keeping in mind the current zoning restrictions, the community's concern, and the long-term impact on the Fairburn area. I believe a development that prioritizes quality commercial spaces, respects traffic concerns, and maintains appropriate parking standards will serve both the community and developer. And I wanted to also touch on, I love structured government, I love structured growth, and the benefits of, that benefits the city of Fairburn residents. I don't believe that he mentioned that city of Fairburn prices have grown. That's overall, that's all over Georgia. That has nothing to do with the building of apartments to me. That's because of inflation. I would hope that you would vote against it. I would also like to mention that commercial piece that they discussed, that they keep mentioning, other developers in the area that are at the other developments like Oslo, Dillon, and the Marlowe, they are currently not rented out. I called today, Marlowe has not been rented out. They don't have, I know he mentioned the last time there was a letter of intent. They don't have everything is vacant. When I drove by the Oslo, they are still vacant. They need to be leased. There's Oslo?
Sir, you keep talking.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You'll get a chance to
But
review.
for Marlowe, as of right now, today, they have not been leased. I spoke with them today. The applicant mentioned at the last meeting that the commercial piece would be used as an amenity if they are not leased. So I guess what he's trying to say is that if the commercial component is not leased, then they would turn it into an amenity for the residents of the apartment complexes. Furthermore, suggesting that us, the residents, will not be able to use that commercial piece. The parking for those commercial spaces are in the back and on the side, if I'm not mistaken. And my question also, and the other thing, my question also to developers is, did they previously build the Popeyes? Are they the owners of the Popeyes that was previously built before the current owner, and did they develop that area? And if so, this is a viable reason to remain C2. And then my last comment is that with that commercial piece, currently how the Oslo, if I'm not mistaken, and the Marlowe is the commercial pieces, you have to rent the bottom portion, and the top portion is where you live. And so if you're not gonna rent both pieces, then it's basically like there's nowhere to, it's a one package and the spaces are very small. So if I, as a business owner, wanted to come in and rent out the bottom portion, which is the retail portion, I really couldn't without renting out the top portion. And I just feel like if we're gonna, be smart about growth in Fairburn, let's get some retail or some commercial spaces. If we have to have apartments, let's get some commercial spaces where we can have commercial kitchens. Marlowe, they don't have, it can't be a commercial kitchen. There's no kitchens on the bottom. So these are for very small mom and pop businesses, and you won't be able to sit down inside. And I don't believe they should be allowed to reduce the commercial space. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Sir, you have a rebuttal?
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to discuss some of those things that you heard. If there are no other comments in opposition, I'll just address some of those things. I think Mr. Roscoe can give you a testament as to the viability of the small commercial component. You heard in opposition that there is a desire, at least from some, for there to be a commercial development on this parcel. Well, I hear that, and we heard that loud and clear when we spoke to some residents. However, I don't have a market magic wand. If there was, the owners would have waived it 20 years ago to find a viable purchaser for this property as it's presently zoned. That hasn't happened. They wouldn't have retained my services. They wouldn't have contracted with Middleburg. They wouldn't have employed a civil engineer. They wouldn't have employed an architect. They wouldn't have gone through all these steps to propose a rezoning if they could have marketed it as presently zoned. You also heard in some of that rebuttal or in some of that opposition that there were concerns that there weren't commercial developments at other similarly situated developments. Well, that's not the case, and Mr. Roscoe can testify to that. But if that were the case, that would be a further testament that commercial is not viable on this parcel. Commercial, as you have seen in just traveling 74 on the zoning map and in your comprehensive map and on just the overall development trend, commercial standalone is viable where you have frontage and visibility on 74. Then the development trend that you've seen is for that mixed-use multifamily to be behind that. The Dillon, the Oslo, Solstice, the Marlowe, the Vida. All of these developments have followed those trends in your comprehensive plan. And that's why I'd ask that you vote consistent with that trend, that comprehensive plan, your staff's recommendation, and the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation, and vote to approve this with staff's recommended conditions subject to those two modifications. Number one, to be 3,000 square feet of commercial total to be delivered at the time of the 125th certificate of occupancy. And then two, the condition regarding brick facades, that the brick be 20%. With that, if you have any questions of me or the applicant or Mr. Roscoe, we'd be happy to answer those.
You go ahead, sir. You got 2.5 minutes left. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you. I just want to address a couple of the comments that she had, a couple of the concerns. So I just want to start by saying Marlowe is not within the city of Fairburn, and a few of the comments that she had regarding commercial space attached to apartments, that you can't rent an apartment without the commercial space, that's not having anything to do with anything that we do or involved with the city of Fairburn. Those are all city of South Fulton. That's a city of South Fulton deal, as well as the retail component not being able to serve a commercial kitchen. So Oslo, which is just north of this property that we're working on right now, out of the 4,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet is under LOI, and 2,000 square feet is currently leased to a small business owner called Unbelieve Again, which has, I think, worked with the city of Fairburn before and provided food. And so they are actually installing a commercial kitchen. There's a full grease trap and everything. It'll be a fully serviceable restaurant. And then just regarding, parking, I'm in the business of building apartments that are successful, and I would not ever build something that would be underparked, because that is a really good way to get really poor reviews and have a poorly run community. You'd have people, parking on the streets and that kind of thing, and you just cannot have that as an apartment owner and operator. And so from experience, Solstice, Oslo, and the Dillon all have 1.5 spaces per unit, and it's very typical for us to build 1.5 spaces per unit across our entire portfolio. And then the last thing I want to address is the retail, the condition that says if we're unable to lease the retail within a year, that we're able to turn it into amenity that is also accessible by the public. So I think our idea behind that is that, we want to lease this out. We want this to be a restaurant. We want to have another Unbelieve Again in the restaurant.
In seconds. Keep going.
But if we're unable to get market rents, we're going to turn that into a co-working space where anyone from the public can come pay us for co-working space and rent out their own office.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, members of council, I'd like to take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion is made and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Excuse me. And Ms. Brookins, would you do me a favor before council even deliberates about the two conditions that he mentioned, what's the city's perspective on that?
Because of the concerns with traffic, the reduction in the commercial space does make some sense. It would reduce the amount of traffic. I would, however, instead of saying 125 certificate of occupancy, just 125 units, because we don't give a certificate of occupancy for every apartment. So just making sure that it's units. But staff has no issue. The Planning and Zoning Commission was also aware of the request for 3,000, and they didn't have any opposition to it as well.
And the issue about the 30% break, 20%, is it?
Have no issue with that. I will say this, for the last two multifamily development, it has been 30% brick.
Okay. So members of council, thank you. Just wanted a clarification before I bring it to council. Members of council, you have before you an item for the rezoning and concurrent variance for KBD. Is there a motion? Let's bring the item to the floor for discussion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments by council? Go ahead, Mr. Whitmore, you had, and then Ms. Hudson, you had a question.
Can we bring up the project, please? You have one that's a little closer, just to show.
I sent you a message.
You did a motion for discussion?
Yeah, just a motion for discussion. Yes, yes, ma'am, trying to bring it to the floor.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Go back to that one. Okay. So, well, a couple of things. Just leave that picture there for a minute. Number one, I know the entry into this property is going to be on Renaissance.
Yes, sir. Yes, Councilman.
And just to talk about that brick, first of all, whether or not it's approved or not, going down to 20% versus 30%, when we look at the other properties that have been built here in the city of Fairburn with the 30%, I think it looks, is attractive. It's more aesthetically pleasing.
It's not a problem with us, Councilman. If it's the will of this council to be 30%, it's acceptable to the applicant as well as our purchaser.
And looking at this diagram or this presentation right here, where it shows a couple of commercial businesses on the bottom, I'm counting maybe 3. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's 4.
It would be subdivided as required by a tenant, so.
Okay, so.
Tenant wants all of it, or half of it, or a quarter of it.
So.
By the market.
So again, a perfect point when you go look at Trilliff, when you go to Smyrna, when you go to some of the other municipalities that actually has commercialization on the bottom and residential on top. They have been very successful, but it looks as if this is just going to be limited, and I'm going to say just to that one cluster of units. Is that correct?
Correct. Go ahead, Councilman.
No, go ahead.
And that's for a multiple of reasons. Number one is traffic and parking. Number two is the utilization that we have seen at other comparable developments in the city in terms of the commercial space underneath. We didn't want to overpopulate it with commercial, so we wanted to do a commercial space that, again, was consistent with other developments in the city that have been approved.
So in looking at some of the other communities outside of Fairburn, we'll talk about outside of Fairburn, that have successfully engaged with commercialization on the bottom and residential on top. If you look at that and mimic that particular study, it can be successful. Would you not agree?
Councilman, I do agree that it can be successful. However, the problem that we've seen is that commercial needs visibility, especially from the highway. And what this pocket at this parcel does is that is the portion that's facing 74. I can show you in an overview. And so that was what we were trying to wed with this. That commercial is along Renaissance Parkway to the east. You see the line in between there and the existing buildings that are fronting on 74. So we tried to fill those bottom spaces, like you were saying, with commercial on the bottom, but also give it the visibility from 74 that it needs. That's one of also the main reasons that we think that the parcel has never developed consistent with its present zoning and why it's not viable to develop as presently zoned, because it doesn't sit on 74 consistent with those other commercial developments. And if you look in this overall overhead map of development in the area, as well as the zoning map, you see that those C2s really all have frontages, or the viable C2s that are developed all have the frontage along 74 in the exposure. So we were trying to thread the needle between what the uptake we think that there is, as well as what the known needs of commercial tenants.
I'm having a hard time conceptualizing that, and I'll tell you my reason why. If you go down 34, I can't think of the other roadway there in Noonan, where you're off of 34 and the businesses are being very successful, those that are being built off of the main artery there on both sides of the highway. That would be number one. Number two, I think if we would look at Buckhead. Number three, I think if we would look at Smyrna. And I can probably go ahead and name probably a half a dozen, if not a dozen other areas as well. But the other thing that really concerns me is that, and I'm not saying this is being done, but let's just say there's not a big push on that commercialization part. And then after a year, no commercialization, but it'll turn into a workspace. That's a major concern for me, because anyone that pays attention to the city of Fairburn knows that we have been talking about white tablecloths, supermarkets, and really building up the commercial side of this side of 85, all right? But I see a detraction from that in looking at this. That's concerning for me. But I'll yield my time for my colleagues to see what they have to say.
Citizen, go ahead.
How many community meetings were held?
So we had one on December 6th, and then we also had 2 virtual ones earlier in August.
So why isn't the feedback from those meetings represented in your packet? Because what I'm seeing is 1216 is rehearsed over and over again through the packet. And then there's one opposition that I was told, correct? One opposition?
Correct.
So in honesty, if you met with them in Zoom, and I see that you use the analytics from Zoom to determine who logged on and how long that they were there, those same analytics, that same system can give us some information about what the residents talked about or what their concerns were during that meeting. I am very concerned because our residents have been under-engaged. There's an awakening now that they are becoming more engaged. And no development is successful without the residents in the city of Fairburn. As my colleague stated about commercial development, I'm tired of driving to Peachtree City for what I want, and I want it here in Fairburn. The parking space is 1.5. I don't know anybody got a car and a half. It's 2 cars. I'm not for sure what that is about, but we won't be apartment out, if that says. Like, I am for the development in terms that is equitable, that is smart, and that promotes the commercial entities that residents are asking for. So I'm trying to understand why such the underplay of the commercial development on such a beautiful development that you presented, because I feel like without that, you're really, we're going to be cheated with that, because you could say that the lack of effort that went in to push for that, now it could default, well, if we don't, it's office space. I go sit at Starbucks in Fairburn. I love it, which is my second office away from my home. So I'll be, in summary, the parking is an issue. You have 2 people living in a 1-bedroom and they have 2 cars. The lack of effort to have robust commercial with this development, the absence of the community voices in this application, and I'm not for sure why the meeting roster is in here like 3 times. I don't know, but that's a concern for me.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. Could I address?
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In terms of community engagement, Councilwoman Hudson, we did have 3 community meetings, all of which were attended, and we did address the concerns that we heard then. One concern we heard was traffic congestion, and that is, I think, one of the reasons that we chose proactively to engage and commission a traffic study for this development, which showed that if there were a purchaser for a commercial development across the entire parcel, that would generate upwards of 8,000 trips per day, whereas the residential component would generate approximately 1,600, 1,300, and then the commercial component would generate about the same. So we looked at that, and that was something that we considered. We spoke with the HOA to the east of the property, Foxwood. I've met multiple times and spoke with pretty frequently the HOA president for that development.
Did you talk to the community?
Mr. Horn, yes, ma'am.
Did you talk to the community?
Yes, ma'am.
He, Okay.
Go ahead and get, you can, go ahead and finish her, and then she's gonna ask you.
Mr. Horn and I are on a first-name basis and actually text and communicate by phone quite frequently and have communicated about this development. The one concern that he raised, and we've been back and forth discussing because he was the shepherd for his HOA's concerns, and he really galvanized them and collected their concerns. And I wish he could be here tonight, but he's not, because at our last public hearing, we spoke, and he thanked us for the efforts that we had done to engage him and to discuss and hear his concerns. And one of the concerns that he had was not only the traffic, but I showed him the traffic study. And I showed him the connection that Renaissance Parkway was going to have. Mr. Roscoe and I discussed with him the Highway 74 connection, and we showed that we were really trying to be good neighbors. He also echoed one of your concerns, Councilwoman Hudson, that he does want a grocery store in Fairburn. He does want more sit-down restaurants. And Mr. Harris and I, Mr. Harris was one of the owners for almost 2 decades. KBD tried to bring that pre-recession. They had a purchaser that was going to develop that entire corridor for something that was like the avenues at Peachtree City. It was a company out of New York that, again, was going to develop that entire corridor. They didn't. They lost everything in the recession, and KBD has been sitting ever since. If that had come along, we would be just as happy as y'all. The property owner has owned this property for 2 decades and wanted nothing but Fairburn to succeed and for the residents to get what they feel like should be on the property. But as we've sat, we have seen the comprehensive plan get instituted. We've seen mixed-use multifamily developments up and down 74. Again, to go back to that overall aerial that we looked at, this is the last parcel, and every other similarly situated parcel that's set back off 74 has a mixed-use multifamily on it, development on it that was recently approved or that has been constructed. To your question, Councilwoman, about the commercial and the utilization of that, we're really trying to thread the needle on that and be consistent with the commercial that we've seen at other developments. Namely, I believe the Portman Holdings development and the Oslo. The square footage on those consistent with the number of units is about consistent. So that's what we were trying to do is follow the market and follow what we had seen be successful before this council and in the community before. That also goes, Councilwoman, to the parking variance, the 1.5. I agree, nobody has half a car unless it's been in a wreck. But these are young professional units, and the mix between them and your staff recommended conditions contemplates that. So you're really not looking towards family units, you're looking towards 2-bedroom with a work-from-home suite or a 1-bedroom. And that's also consistent with what we've seen at the Dillon and the Oslo. And those parking reductions are consistent with what we've seen at, I believe, the Vita across the street, at the Dillon, the Oslo, and the Solstice, because when you've got those young professional targeted developments, that 1/2 carries over to another unit, so it kind of offsets the folks that may have 2 cars, but doesn't presume that every unit is going to be occupied by somebody with 2 cars. So it's kind of that trade-off. So we really have tried to thread the needle here. We really took time. We've been at this a long time, again, and we have listened to community concerns. We've been actively involved with the HOA next door. You'll see that there were 2 HOAs present on the community meeting, the Zoom meeting, and we tried to incorporate all that. But we also tried to incorporate what this council has said through its comprehensive plan and through what the market has shown is viable on these and other parcels. So really, we're just asking for this to be what the aerial shows is the last parcel to effectuate this development trend. I mean, we are proposing something, again, that's consistent with what is on the ground on every other parcel in this corridor except ours. And we've been sitting and waiting for that market for 20 years since it fell apart in 2008.
Cecily, you still have the floor.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be real brief. When we come to talking about community, I don't live in the HOA. That's why I said you talked to the HOA president.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And so the voices have to be elevated of that community. No HOA president can speak for all of Fairburn. We can't get in the habit of doing that at all. That's dangerous. I'm still trying to understand, because I like to, those developments that we approved, I had clear indication on what the community wanted and what they were saying. On this development, I don't have that in writing at all. Not that you can take verbatim everything, but if someone says 30 people was on a Zoom call and they raised concerns with you, we have one of those residents here that say, hey, they really didn't address our concerns. Now, you did address what is not a Fairburn, and so we can't speak on anything that's not a Fairburn. With the 50 seconds that I got left, to our attorney, tell us where we are legally with this development. What issues or concerns should we be concerned about in either way, yay or nay?
And can I, could you use for me, because I was going to ask a similar question. My question in conjunction with her question, my question would be, if the item were to fail, legally, what would be the consequences in this case if it failed in this case where the efforts dealing with the consequence? I'll stop right there and let you answer that. Go ahead, okay.
The decision to rezone the property is a legislative decision, so that is within your legislative discretion.
Okay.
Whether or not you decide to rezone this property or not. And the only question before the court, if this were to be denied, would be the constitutionality of the existing zoning of the property. So the question before the court, if this applicant decided to appeal this decision, would be, is the existing zoning, which is C2, constitutional? Then it would be a balancing before the court. They would weigh the harm to the applicant with the detriment to the public based upon this C2. That does the existing C2 zoning classification harm the landowner? And the harm is considered financial, which at this point in time, we would not be able to answer that because you need experts and testimony and discovery to determine that. And then the public benefit would be looking at what is the benefit of the C2 to the community and the city of Fairburn. And with that respect, you do look at the future land use map and the comp plan, and I know staff has said C2 is compatible with the future land use map and the comp plan, as well as what has been said, what they are proposing, the PD, as well, is also compatible with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. So really, it is within your legislative discretion to.
Gotcha. Ms. Hudson, you still had the floor.
How many developments do we have coming up now? Apartments?
Councilwoman Hudson, there are 2 that are currently approved by council that have not yet begun construction, the Portman development, which is approximately across from the park and ride. And the other is near the World of Beverage, just south of Milam Road, and the name of that one escapes me. It's across from Vida. Yeah, Ms. Brookins would know the name of it. That one has not yet begun construction either. Both approved. That one's approximately across from the golf location. Swing golf location is directly across the street from there. So those are the 2 that are pending.
How far are we with the rooftops that we need? Will this development help us get what we need for commercial?
We did complete a market study, so we are close to what we need to have more commercial development. But in terms of our capacity, we are not exceeding what our market would demand with this development based on that market study that was recently completed.
Okay, I'm gonna hold for the next 5 minutes. I'll come back.
Mr. Whitmore, you had a question? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just make a statement. I am concerned as well. I'll just put that on the record with the lack of additional feedback from the community, because we have seen in the latest developments as it relates to the other developments that we have approved or denied, we've really had robust communication from the community. So I would have liked to have seen more about that as well too. And then historically, let me ask something, because you did just tell us about something before the recession that did not go through. Has there been any commercial developments that the owner did not want to be developed? What's the history of the entire 20 years? Because we heard a lot about the 20 years, and he's basically, the picture's being painted of just being sitting there and not being able to get an off-taker, I think you called it.
Right.
So what is the history of, you know, close to being developed, not close to be developed? I mean, one person, two person, you know, just a little history of it, so I'll know better as well.
Certainly, and I'll have Mr. David Harris with the property owner address that question. I do want to arc back to the community involvement. Again, we've had 3 community meetings on this. The concerns that we did hear, we did our very best to incorporate, that being traffic. We had commissioned a traffic study to address that, to show the community that the zoning would reduce the traffic if we could have found, to Mr. Harris's coming point, a purchaser for the property to be developed as C2. We also heard that there was a desire for commercial uses that could be utilized by the public on that site. And we said, look, it's not big enough. To Mr. Harris's point, or it's too big for a commercial development to be there that will take the whole property. But we will do our best to put the uses in that space that we've heard. But we can't wave a magic wand and create the market for that use or create that user. I can't, you know, we just can't create a sit-down restaurant that wants to locate there, or a boutique salon or something. That's an entrepreneur or a business decides they want to be there. But we did try to incorporate that, and I think that's why one of staff's conditions also says that if that commercial component isn't viable, that it'll be an amenity area that's also open to the public, to incorporate that concern that, hey, maybe some of this PD space could be usable by the public if it's not commercial. So that was one concern. And really, the traffic concern and the desire for uses, which the market just has not produced for this parcel, were the 2 main concerns that we heard. And I could look back in my call log, but I have talked to community representatives on countless occasions about this development since August. And in fact, we've tabled quite a few times to continue to engage in those discussions, namely with the homeowners in the development, Foxwood, which is closest to us. And I don't believe any of the Foxwood residents chose to come today because I'd hoped that we did our best to hear and address those concerns at prior community meetings and at the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And one other question before he speaks. Not saying that you're doing this, but I know numbers can be manipulated. So the traffic study you did with the particular commercial component on that, could that be different based on the type of commercial that you did the traffic study for? Did you do the most on that traffic study to?
It could be larger. I think we were conservative with a 90,000 square foot under footprint. I mean, you've got more than 14 acres out there, and there's over 43,000 square feet in an acre. Mm-hmm. So we're really saying that only 2 acres are going to be commercial on that site, and the rest is going to be open or parking. I think that's an underestimate of what commercial could be there. But I didn't, and the applicant and I didn't want to be over-aggressive, because I didn't want to come in here and say South Lake Mall's going on this, or North Point Mall's going on this, because that would be disingenuous with what I turn around and say is, no commercial off-taker wants this entire 14 acres, and that's the problem. And like I said, Mr. Harris and Mr. Williams wouldn't have hired me and wouldn't have hired a civil and wouldn't have put this property on the market and found Mr. Roscoe's company if it could have been sold and developed as C2. It just hasn't happened. And I think that's a great segue if that answers your question.
Yeah, that answered it.
To Mr. Harris,
Okay.
and he can give you the history.
Yeah, the history.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm David Harris. I'm one of the 2 owners of the property. And my oldest grandson was born the year we bought this property. He's a sophomore in college now. I mean, we've sat on this property. We've paid a lot of taxes. We've been through 2 bank failures. I mean, we have struggled to keep the property. We've marketed this property commercially. I guarantee you there's not a commercial broker in Atlanta that's not aware of this property. The problem is, if you try to put a Home Depot or Lowe's or something in there, they can't deal with 14 acres.
So it's too small for a really, really large development like a Home Depot or a Walmart or Lowe's, but it's too large for strip center type development. The strip center developments you see around are on, most of them are on 3 or 4 acres, and we've got 14. So it's an unusual piece of property. We didn't buy it to sit on it for 20 years, I promise you that. We actually had a contract when we acquired the property. If you could show the map again, there was a developer, I think Stephen said in New York, the Landmark Group out of Chicago had a contract to buy this property and everything up to Harris Drive. They were going to put in a development very similar to Fayette Pavilion. I mean, they had 100 acres under contract. Our 14, and at the time we had 22. That was before Renaissance was there, before we sold off the Popeye site, we sold off the Dollar site. We built the auto service center that Meineke's in. But before all that happened, we had a contract to sell it was 22 acres when we started. But that group also had contracts all the way up to Harris to put a Fayette Pavilion in the capital markets. It came in 2007 and 2008 as they diminished. They went away. And so ever since then, so up and down the corridor there, they've done a similar deal to this. I mean, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to fall into place with what's already been done north of us twice. It's the same specs and the same density that's already been done twice. Has been approved by this council and been developed. But I promise you, we didn't buy it to sit on it for 20 years. We've marketed it through multiple real estate brokers. And I just, you know, I'm not going to say every broker in Atlanta knows about it, but the majority of them do. I mean, we've hit it hard. We've been wanting to sell it for, I mean, we barely held on to it when the banks started. Like I say, we had 2 banks fail on us. And we ended up dealing with the FDIC, and then after that, what I call the vulture banks that buy stuff for 10 cents on the dollar and then come to us and say, pay up. So we paid up. We paid it off, and we struggled, and, you know, we've tried to be good citizens, but it's just not a commercial market for a 14-acre piece. It's a very odd-shaped, odd size. I mean, I wish we had bigger and we could put a Home Depot or something in there, but we can't.
So let me ask you this, because I may have heard something there. Correct me if I'm wrong then. So when you bought it, though, it wasn't 14. It was more, and then you have sold other pieces off of it. So
we've sold the commercial off the front. That front's on 74. When we bought it, it went all the way to 74.
Okay.
And so but what we have found the commercial users, like Stephen said, the commercial users, they don't want to be in the back. They want access and they want exposure. They want to be seen from a 4-lane highway. So that's why Popeyes is there and the dollar store is there and the Meineke's there. We couldn't have put any of those on the east side of Renaissance. They want the exposure. Commercial needs the exposure. And once Renaissance completed, I don't think there's going to be, we paid almost $10,000 for that traffic study. Staff wanted that. We accommodated them. And it showed what I thought it was going to show, that if we could develop it as it's zoned, then the traffic impact would be horrendous as compared to what it would be with this type of a development. We've done everything we've been asked to do. And, you know, I've handled as an attorney and as a developer over about 35, 40 years, I've handled a lot of zonings. And I've never had as much public input as we had on this one. We mailed everybody. We had the Zoom meetings. We had the public meeting up the street. And, you know, why the people, if they're supposedly in opposition, why they're not here tonight is beyond me. They know about it. The signs were posted. We had to buy the signs so the city could post them. I mean, it's not like we've tried to tuck this thing in and run with it. I mean, I've been involved in 3 different public hearings on the thing. And so I've handled a lot of them that we didn't have, you know, we didn't even have a public hearing. When you have a P&Z hearing, and that's the first public hearing. The second one comes before either the commissioners or council, depending on the jurisdiction. But I think we've done everything we were supposed to do, and we've paid taxes on the property in the city and the county for 20 years. And like I say, my grandson's a sophomore in college, and he was born the year we bought it. I mean, we would have sold it 10, 12, 15 years ago if we had had a buyer. This is the first this is the most usable situation we've had. So I would ask y'all to consider that. We've tried to meet with the neighborhood, and the HOA president, I think, led us to believe that he was representing, you know, the community that he was president of. And the last I heard, he said, we'd rather have this than a commercial development. I mean, let's be realistic. If everybody had their wishes, they just leave it just like it is. Maybe let the city put a park there. And we'd work with you if y'all want to put a park there, if you want to buy it. But that's what everybody really wants. Just leave it like it is. And that's not realistic, and that's not fair to us, and I don't think it's constitutional. But so I would just ask you folks to just consider what you've heard from me, what you've heard from our lawyers, and what you've heard from the proposed user. And the opposition is, I've never had a zoning that I didn't have some opposition. I mean, some people just speak because they're going to speak. And with all due respect, you know, to those the lady that spoke, I mean, I understand her concern, but really and truly, if you ask her, she'd rather just leave it like it is. Really don't want commercial, but, you know, we're entitled to use the property, and I think we've been very patient, and we're not trying to run anything by anybody without notice, and so I just ask your consideration and approve it, subject to the conditions that we've agreed on.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought I saw you. Go ahead, Mr. Whitmore. Go ahead, sir.
So, just for record purposes, during the presentation, you did mention 8574 Divergent Diamond. No Divergent Diamond. That's not happening. Okay, it's not going to be like down in South on you know what I'm talking about. East Point. East Point, Camp Creek, yes. So there's not a Divergent Diamond coming. There is widening of the roadway. There's going to be, what, either 3 or 4 lanes north, 4 lanes south, up to Milam Road, and a half cloverleaf. So that's going to really assist with some traffic, okay? And the fact that you're on Renaissance is one thing. And is there any plans, the city has any plans on Milam Road expanding that, to your knowledge?
Not currently.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just.
No, sir.
If you have some.
Not that I am aware of. I can check with Mr. Thompson.
Okay.
There are no current plans to expand Milam at this time.
So I will say, trust me when I say I understand comp plan. I understand the future land use map. I understand constitutionality, all right? My question to you as a developer, Sean, as a developer, based on everything that you heard here tonight, and again, I understand Mr. Harris, 20 years sitting on this property until he can get a viable buyer. I got it. I understand all that. I think what you heard from up on this dais is we're trying to ensure that we get, and I'll use the military term, greatest deed for the greatest number. All right? And what that is saying is that, yes, we understand we're looking for rooftops, but we're also looking for restaurants. We're also looking for a supermarket. All right, now I know everything is not going to go there on this, where's this? I got it written down somewhere. How many acres you have? 8 acres, I think you said? 14 acres. I understand that. But the part, the alarming part that I'm having the hardest to deal with is if you don't get to commercialization, then it's turned into a community space for rent. All right, I did hear that, correct?
That's also available to the public.
I'm sorry?
That's also available to the public.
My point.
Staff's condition is it would be an amenity area open to the public.
Open to the public for rent.
No, I think the condition would require it just to be open to the public as an amenity.
I thought you could, but that's the office space you're talking about, right?
Right.
But it-
So we can change the condition if that is what we need to do. The intention was, because in some of our successful communities, we have created micro offices that anyone can go use, right? Anyone in the whole community, or a private micro office space. I personally work out of a co-working space where I rent an office in a larger office community when I don't have a company, that I work with. So I just rent an individual office, and that's the type of business that we would open in this 3,000 square feet, where if you didn't want to work from home from your kitchen table, you can go rent an office. And that could be daily, monthly, set up a year contract, whatever it might be. And that offers internet for everyone and printing stations and, everything that a co-working space would have.
My direct question to you is this. If you had the opportunity, which you do, to go back and retweak this, what would you come back to this body with?
It's a good question, because I think that we've presented the highest and best use for this property. Based on previous experience just north at Oslo, we have 4,000 feet there, and I think that's integrated in a beautiful community, ground floor retail, units above it. It's flanking a really nice front entry, which is something that we want to create as well. And to date, we've been leasing that, not we, South City Partners has been leasing that space for 2 years. It has been on the market. We've been pounding the pavement. We've had a lot of people come knock on the doors and see if it's something they're interested in. And at the end of the day, the second tier retail on Renaissance Parkway is just not as desirable for folks. And so the 3,000 square feet, I think, is something that a small business like Unbelievigan ends up leasing. I think that at the end of the day, we end up with a really good small business owner that decides they want to take a stab at opening their restaurant they've always dreamed of. And we will provide, the grease traps and the ventilation and the HVAC units that are required for retail. And if we don't get a restaurant, we'll subdivide it, 1,000 square feet, 3 ways. But that is, I believe that's the best use, and the condition is mitigating the risk that we have that you end up with vacant retail sitting there. Because half of the retail at Oslo is vacant and sitting there. And, at market rate, it's if we want to get rid of that language, it's a I think a cost of doing business.
I'm glad.
I was gonna say, Mr. Whitmore, do you have a motion you wanna possibly grab?
Even before that motion come forth, Mayor,
Go ahead, sir.
we talked about this with another development where we talked about the people that run restaurants, build restaurants and everything else out in Vegas. They have an annual convention. Are you aware that we have staff that is out there right now
I have not been in the market.
convening or engaging in this type of engagement to see about bringing viable restaurants to our city?
If you're speaking of Sylvia, I talk with Sylvia all the time. And she actually helped set us up with Unbelievigan.
Right, but this is the first time that we have had a representative to go out and represent our city as one of many cities throughout the continental United States. And I know my time is running out, but I think it's important to use all aspects of engagement, not just your real estate people that are looking for certain people. So I would ask that if we would just postpone this hearing, give you an opportunity to, number one, reach back out to the community, not just the HOAs, but really find a way to engage the city as a whole. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we already talked about the brick. Going down to 20%, that's a non-starter, all right? And number three, to address this amenities, if we don't get something within a year, it turns into a workspace and those type of things. Those are alarming to me because when I see my fellow municipalities thriving and doing the things that we're trying to do is achievable. It's achievable. But we need to do everything that we can, knock down all the stumbling blocks, and really roll up our sleeves and really get down to the root of everything so that we can make this the best that it can be. Without having any comments from someone saying they don't believe you're going to do this, that, or the other thing. My time is up.
Any other member of council?
Just a follow-up.
Okay, go ahead, man, go ahead.
So this is for staff. You guys help me because I want to make sure that we are doing the best for Fairburn. For our citizens to understand how we get the restaurants and the retail that we need or desire, we have to have a certain level of rooftops, correct?
Yes,
This does help us get to those rooftops, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. So I'm going to agree with my peer that we need to go back and look at this. I want to be very clear. HOA don't speak for this whole community. Don't. We have to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to reach our constituents. And our constituents need to make sure that they show up to these meetings. Comprehensive planning meeting starts Thursday. I'm gonna slide through. I want to see you there. But I'm going to say that this is a development that we want to nurture. I think we can do that, Mayor. We got to nurture this one. I'm gonna support our community, but I have to say for this applicant, we're not inhumane, and we want to be responsible with this development. Fairburn cannot afford not to develop if you want this. A lot of times what happens, our community members don't understand how we get there. And I understand. I'm with you on that. I want us to be responsive to the fact that our infrastructure is weak. And that I know that Mr. Phillips is making sure that y'all giving us some good stuff on this development. Because he said that developments that's coming into Fairburn is going to build up our infrastructure.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're gonna be smart about this, because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I completely 100% will side with my community. And one of the red flags that came up for me was you met with a HOA president. Oh, that's a no, because we have a large community here of residents who don't reside in HOAs, who feel like that they are disconnected from this process. But we are doing better with informing them and making sure that they are a part of the process. This idea, and I'm gonna let it go, that we can't do better on the retail, I understand the size of that, but I'm looking at Peachtree City and the Thai restaurant that I drive down there to all the time, get that good food. But I could see this as something that can happen. So I'm going to err on the caution and support this development. We have to nurture this a little bit more to get where we need to go. To the community, this has a beginning and this has an end, and we cannot continue all the time voting down these developments because you need the rooftops. You hear them say $99,000 is our median household income. Praise God, because when I moved here, it was very low. And so that says a lot about this community, okay? And so I want to thank everybody that gave their input. I'm gonna ask that we table this and we come back. I want the property owner to know Councilwoman Hudson wants this to happen. We gotta work with our community a little bit more to get there.
There's been a motion to hold, and is it?
Okay, is this a substitute motion to postpone?
I'm sorry,
Because you all put a motion on the floor to discuss, and you
Okay.
never voted on that motion, so I need a substitute motion.
I need a
to
substitute
postpone.
motion. Go ahead, Ms. Hudson. A substitute motion to, go ahead, sir.
Substitute motion to postpone.
Second.
Any other questions from the council? saying none.
I got a, well,
Yeah, go ahead.
but it's more to staff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also too. Because I've asked for this before, and the question was brought up, one of my colleagues asked about what else was being built. And I always say that, I've said it several times, that we look at these things and we look at these projects individually, but that was real creative how they put that on the map and had the red. Could we, for us, have a map that shows everything that's being built? That racetrack is also being built. These two communities are being built. I mean, we have a lot of developments. This is just for me. This has nothing to do with you all. But it helps put in perspective. We're making decisions that's going to affect all of us for many years. And yes, we have to nurture it. We have to be smart. We have a limited amount of land. But I'm sorry, it looked like you wanted to cut me off. Go ahead, because you got something to say. Yes.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
learn to be patient. I'll wait. So we have a development map that has all of the approved projects. We can make that public and send that out to whomever's interested.
Please send it to
We also
me.
have a pending development area on our website. Our communications team has helped bring that together, and we can also make sure that all the links are available so that people can see the plans, and under that, we can have that map and we can have that done before the end of this week.
Because for me, I just want to see, all right, with the stuff we have coming up, how many hundreds of thousands of trips and that
so the-
we don't even see when a new thing comes, but that's already in the works coming.
And
So
so-
while we talk about the traffic that this will provide, it's already more.
And to the point that was made earlier regarding sort of active developments and our economic development team going out, this was created specifically for our economic development
Okay.
team to be able to share with developers, but we can certainly make that public for everyone to see.
Thank you.
I have a question. On your postpone, do you want to postpone until you get something back? Do you have anything specific, how you want to postpone?
Actually, I was gonna ask you, Mr. Whitmore, do you have, what is it that you want them to bring back to you?
Well, my
I just
question,
need to know how long.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear what she said.
How long?
How long?
I was asking, do you have a specific time that you want to postpone it for, or you just want to postpone it till they bring something back?
When you're engaging our citizens, you have to put it out in your signage, and also you put it in the paper as well,
Yes.
okay? And that process, in order to set everything up, takes how long?
If it's a concurrent variance, then it's no less than 30 days. If it is just a rezoning, no less than 15 or more than 45.
So minimum 15, max 30. 30 would give you enough time to do both.
Yes, if you would like us to put those signs out again, then we can, of course, do that.
So I'll modify that motion to postpone for 30 days.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Next item,
Oh,
see,
actually, I come to
next
the,
item is the consent agenda items, and it's number 5, reappointment of Jason Jones to the Planning Commission. His term expires February 24, 2029. Reappointment of Michelle James to Planning and Zoning Commission, expired February 24, 2029. Reappointment of Jacqueline Dulce to the Arts Advisory Board. Term expires February 24, 2029. And reappointment of Jean Patrick Gilchart to the Arts Advisory Board. Term expires February 24, 2029.
members of council, you have before you the consent agenda items number 5 through 8. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Heath, second by Ms. Hudson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Question, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is our magistrate judge? Are we going to do that? We didn't do that.
You talking about Judge Ewing?
Yeah, every year, our charter calls that the clerk and the magistrate judge be
Let me
reappointed.
do this. Let me get you an
Okay.
official answer from the city attorney. He's not,
No, you responded to me last year on that. We got that.
Wasn't that
You just missed it this year.
No, actually, that was a,
No,
I think the judge was changed. Y'all did an ordinance or something to change.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I said,
we did an ordinance to change,
Yeah, to
or
change.
some kind of
change the
modification.
judge,
That's
some
why I'd
kind of
rather give you.
but she
modification
was
on hers.
appointed last year, correct? Okay, attorney's here.
No, I believe Judge Ewing was initially appointed in
21.
Right, and she came back before this
22.
council last year.
But let me do this, and let me bring you
Okay,
an official.
okay.
No, you got the wrong one. Oh, go ahead, Miss, I forgot I said attorneys online. Do you want to speak to that, or go ahead?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My recollection is that in 2022, we amended the ordinance regarding the way the municipal court judge is appointed. And the amendments to the ordinance were made so that we aligned the city ordinance with state law. So that's my recollection.
I remember it being here's what I'd rather do. I'd rather have the city attorney to actually send you an official email in terms about that. I remember the modification. I'd just rather give it to you in official.
I can believe that there was a modification, but she was here last year in a council meeting. There was an email from me to you, Mayor, asking about the appointment of the police chief, the city clerk, and the magistrate judge. And I got the response back that according to the charter, we did not have to reappoint the police chief yearly. Those roles that needed reappointment was the city clerk and the magistrate judge. That was the email response that I got back.
And I'm not questioning that, Ms.
Okay.
But what I'd rather do, if you don't mind, I'd rather have that research and give
Gotcha.
you the entire council.
All right,
official.
all right, we can move on.
The next item is the lease purchase agreement with Motorola Solutions, Inc. for police radios. It is a request for mayor and council approval of a 5-year lease purchase agreement with Motorola Solutions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
An
Please
annual cost of $59,614.76.
Over the last 2 years, the police department has phased in the purchase of Motorola radios, communication devices, with the understanding that older model radios would be obsolete in the future. We were notified in August of 2024 that our oldest model radios, which are the XTS, XTL models, will no longer be supported by the Fulton County Communications effective January 1, 2026. With that in mind, we have purchased radios over the last several years, trying to replace the entirety of our supply of radios, both handheld radios like this one, as well as the radios that are mounted inside our vehicles. We are requesting approval for the 5-year agreement. The annual payment will be $59,614.76. I will point out the payment will not be due until FY 2026, so it will be part of our budgeting process, and it is a 5-year agreement.
All right, members of council, you've heard item number 9, the lease purchase agreement with Motorola for the police department radios. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments by council? Go ahead, Ms.
Real question, you said that this is gonna come up for this year's budget?
No, ma'am, the first payment will not be due until 2026 in the next fiscal year.
Oh, okay, cool, no, all right, fine.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
The next item is the emergency generator for 102 Howard Avenue. It is a request for mayor and council approval for the purchase and installation of an emergency generator for the facility located at 102 Howard Avenue in an amount not to exceed $136,450 with the Capital City Electrical Services.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Over the past 2 years, the Building Operations Department has gone through the process of systematically trying to provide redundancy to our city infrastructure in terms of our assets and our buildings. So through the budget process at the beginning of this year, we budgeted to add an emergency generator to the property at 102 Howell Avenue, which we've done in the last fiscal year at 106 Howell Avenue, at 149 Broad Street, and at 314 Northwest Broad Street.
Members of council, you have before you number 10, the emergency generator for 102 Howard Avenue. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second. Any questions or comments by council?
It's the same generator we've been talking about for a year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's installed 3 already.
Yeah, Councilman Hudson, this is would be the 4th permanent one that we've bought in the last 2 years, or
You
last
have
2
heard
fiscal.
about others.
Yeah.
They've been installed.
We've been buying them year by year.
Okay.
Systematically, strategically, yes, sir.
All right, cool.
Question, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So how many more areas do we have to secure with this?
Secure, well, right now, we're looking at the other buildings that have major administrative functions, so that would be City Hall, and we have to look at municipal court. But other than that, all the new projects have generators already incorporated into the scope. For Fire Station 23, already has one.
Okay, so the safety complex is already in there?
It's already in the document, sir.
I wanted to hear, thank
It's already in the scope of work.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
The next item is Fire Station number 23, owner contingency increase. This is a request for mayor and council approval to increase the fire station number 23 owner's contingency by $239,638.35 from the original 5% to 10%, $479,276.70 for an overall construction budget of $5,272,043.70. You got it.
Yeah, yes, Mayor and Council, back when you all originally awarded this project, we awarded this project to the contractor with a 5% contingency. And normally, we like to do at least 10%, but we made the 5% work because that's what we had at the time. And we have gotten through many things on the project, but we can tell you in all transparency with the unforeseen events, as in the AT&T strike, as in some telecommunications issues, as in the 2 snow events, as well have extended the project and caused us to use the contingency funds that we had originally on the project. So now we're back here needing to be at that industry norm of 10%. That's what we're asking for. The funds are already there in the Fire Go bond that is already established. So there's no needing to add or move funding. We would just like to get up to 10% to finish out the project with as much haste as possible.
Mr. Council, you have before you a request for Fire Station 23 contingency increase. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Smallwood and second by Ms. Hudson. Any questions? Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir, with this increase, project-wise, timeline-wise, what's your estimation?
So that's one thing that I work with the contractor and I grilled them on. So right now, with the impacts I told you, we initially hoped to be done by the end of the first quarter, so end of March. Now we are, with those impacts we've had, are looking to be mid-second quarter, to be done with the building. And I'll say done in totality because the inside of the building is very close to completion. It's the outside that got impacted by the telecommunications issues and the weather. That's what you'll see is now what we call the critical path of the project, meaning that anything that impacts the site work is impacting the overall project duration. So the inside looks, and actually, Mike, you got me? The outside looks like this. Yeah, and so we need to get that pavement, that concrete work, we need to get that finished. But that was the snow, and we're not doing work and stuff. The inside looks like this. We've got countertops, we've got cabinets going in, we are already, the fans are in, the doors are up, the flooring has been almost really completed. We've already got the paint on the wall. We're very, very close, but it's the outside that got the impact from those issues. So to answer your point, Councilman Whitmore, a little thoroughly, is that we'll be done with the inside and then we'll just be finishing the outside, and that's what's taking us till May because all those things that happened to the project impacted the site work. But we kept going with what we could do.
Can I just add, sir, if you don't mind? What's going to happen is the contingency, coincidentally, because of the project or the position I deal with Fulton County, the procurement, believe it or not, this snowstorm actually messed up a lot of contractors to the point where some of the contractors are actually up against the wall having to finish a project because they've got another NTB, notice of proceed date they must meet at for another government. And so the snow, the weather actually messed us up, not just us in the metro area, in so many different ways. So I just wanted to let you know that we're not a standalone situation as it relates to what this weather this year unexpectedly has done. Any other questions or members of council? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Next item is an agreement with Power Pro Utility Contractors for electrical infrastructure on Valley Brook Drive. There's a request for mayor and council approval to enter into an agreement with Power Pro Utility Contractors for the replacement and reconduction of critical three-phase overhead power line installation on Valley Brook Drive in an amount not to exceed $104,458.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Staff Fairburn enters into Pros Power all the overhead three-phase upgrade for the Valley Brook Drive Capital Improvement Project, not to exceed $104,458. The installation of the project by Power Pros for the infrastructure upgrade will be inspected and monitored by Electric Cities of Georgia Engineering in conjunction with the City Electric Division until completion. The necessary improvement of this capital upgrade will allow for the future replacement of an isolated failing underground infrastructure installed in 1988 along Oakley Industrial Boulevard. This service serves our citizens and some of our largest commercial customers, such as Duracell, Google, Smuckers, and DHL, to name a few. The City Electric Division will assume responsibility for the maintenance of the completed distribution infrastructure after the final inspection has been completed by the Electric Cities of Georgia Engineering and the City Electric Division. Thank you.
Members of council, you have before you an agreement, item number 12, agreement with Power Pros Utility Contractors for electric infrastructure on Valley Brook Drive. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a question for you. My question you can just tell me if I'm completely off point right now. I thought there was an effort in that we talked about moving utility underground. Am I misunderstanding?
No, sir. Mr. Mayor, I just want to reflect that the underground that's there now is failing.
Oh, gotcha.
So the bridge, as I would call it, that's going to be built through Valley Brook Drive will alleviate that and allow us to move the project to replacing that underground infrastructure.
Gotcha. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Whitmore.
So the three-phase that you're talking about in that one area, are there other areas of the city that we have just a two-phase and need the three-phase improvements?
Not that would support that area, no.
I'm just not talking about that area. I'm just talking about anywhere in general within the city of Fairburn. And I asked that question for a reason. One of our commercial customers right downtown had a two-phase, all right, that really should have been a three-phase. And since then, it has been improved. This is going back maybe 7 years. But it just prompted me to ask the question whether or not we have other areas of the city that we still need to convert over to three-phase. And you can come back if you don't have that.
If I could get with the engineering staff and get back to you on that, I could do so.
Actually, I think your utility director has an answer for him. Okay.
So normally when you put that up, it's based on a need. So at the time when they built that line however many years ago, that was all they needed. So what happens is if you get a gas station or grocery store or something move in that needs three-phase, then you come pulling in the third phase. So generally that's kind of what drives the expansion of that line.
Okay, that's the driver you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right.
I want to say thank you to the utility team because I'm telling you, it was like clockwork. Y'all was getting it done. I was traveling and was told the responsiveness of the team, and then to come home and see how you guys were out there working when that tree came down and you had to get it up. I'm going to say we've had our challenges, but by far, I think Fairburn Utilities is the best utility company on the south side.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, John.
And along those lines, I will admit, thank you. We've had our fair share, like you said, of weather issues. I want to just thank city administrator, assistant city administrator who had a conversation with me at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so and I guess in this case, she already knew I was calling, and basically the answer was they're already en route back to Fairburn. It was a terrible storm, and so Just want to thank our crews because there was a lot of trees that fell during that day, as you can see in the city. So thank you so much. With that being said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
The next item is the purchase and installation of 1,250 water meters. It is a request for mayor and council approval for the purchase of the water meters from Kendall Meter Supply, an amount not to exceed $519,150.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Water and Sewer Division of the Utilities brings forth to you for approval Phase 2 of the water meter changeout program. And just to bring you up to date, water meter changeout program was initiated in 2022 with the aid of the ARPA money. With council approval, we were able to change out 1,500 aged water meters throughout the city. This was considered the first phase of the changeouts of a total of 6,421 water meters. Due to the age of those water meters, which is 15 years or more, the changeout was very intimate. With the new water meters readings being retrieved by a motorized unit, which is picked up monthly via the onboard equipment, that made easy reading what it was. After phase 1 was completed, water crews, they honed in using in-house meter inventory, changing out water meters that were either damaged, non-functioning, or require meter change out due to other management requests. There's a phase 2 meter change out that is for FY25 for a total of 1,250 water meters to be changed out. These will be selected and changed out by their lifespan, which is in our database. Just to bring you up to date with the figures that are 6,425 water meters overall. 1,500 were changed out in 2022. Staff between the years 23 and 24 changed out 250. That was a total of 1,750 meters that have been changed out. With the blessing here of the 1,250 that can be approved by council, that will leave from 4,671, which that total that's coming from the 1,750, minus the 1,250, will be 3,421 water meters after this that will need to be changed out. There'll be just enough to be considered just at half point or a little over half point of a complete change out. So, Water and Sewer requested mayor and council to approve the purchase and installation of these 1,250 water meters by Kendall for the purchase of not to exceed $519,150.
Members of council, you have before you a purchase and installation of 1,250 water meters. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments by council? I just want to say that this particular company does substantial amount of work in the metro area, a brand name for this particular service. So just glad they won it. With that being said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, council.
The next item is advanced voting location. This is a request for mayor and council's decision on whether to have an advanced voting location in the city of Fairburn for 2025 municipal general election. The cost will be $41,770 for the November 4th, and if it's a runoff, it would be $16,087 for a total cost of $57,857. When I received the information from Fulton County and saw that the city of Fairburn was no longer on there as an advanced voting location, I sent an email in to find out why we were not. And the answer was with anticipated low voter turnout and the newly constructed election hub less than 3 miles from the Fairburn Annex, we found that the election hub had better parking and handicap accessibility to serve both Fairburn and Union City voters. If the city of Fairburn would like to have an advanced voting location, we would have to pay those funds. I would say that we had used the annex before, and I do understand that the annex has some issues there. So go ahead.
So I can speak towards the annex. As you know, our building operations director did recently put a new roof on there. However, as recent as a week ago, the we share a wall with a business that sits directly behind our facility. We found out that that building is under there's some severe damages to the roof of that location. And so we engaged not only our city building official, but also our fire marshal, code enforcement, and they were able to walk the property with the owner. As a result of the damage to that building, there is some intrusion of water on their structure. And so because we share a wall, that water is now seeping underneath until the annex building. And so it typically, if it's a heavy rain, it has flooded the offices in that space. And so we are working with the building owner to get that situation resolved, and the city will handle it appropriately. But when we do experience heavy downpours, sometimes it does require us to relocate events that are planned in that space due to the intrusion of water. And so we just want you to keep that in mind in reference to this decision, but we are looking forward to a resolution and working with the building official, code enforcement, the property owner, as well as the fire marshal.
Members of council, you have before you item 14, advanced voting location. Is there a motion?
So move.
Okay, is this motion to not have it here?
Motion to approve.
Okay, no, I left it up for you all to
yeah,
decide
okay.
whether you wanted to have an advanced voting location here. If you approve to have one, we have to pay the $57,000 and get the annex fixed. If we stay with their recommendation, which is more handicap accessible, and stay with Fulton County, so I just want you to decide whether you motion to have an advanced voting location or to allow it to stay at the new election hub.
Okay, well, you want to modify your motion, whichever way you want to go.
I think I'm gonna go with, we need to keep it here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion to keep it here.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, any questions or comments by council?
I guess I have a comment. I just happen to be one of, 2 or 3 officials from the city of Fairburn that went to the new hub, which is right there on 138.
Correct.
I mean, it's a 500,000 square foot facility with the voting machines in there, staff, ample parking. I mean, they have everything. And just looking at the damage that we currently have with the annex building, we're not sure when that's going to be resolved, right? If anything, my major concern would be transportation for those that do not have transportation. And that's something that we could look at from the city administrator's side of the house and possibly offer some type of service for that. But it's still, having that transportation service is going to be a far cry from $57,857. If you haven't been down there to the new hub, I would fully recommend that you do so, because we're blessed to have that in our corridor, and it services a lot of us, not just Fairburn, all the municipalities around us. And you'll be in and out in no time with all the staff that they have in a facility like that.
Go ahead, Ms. James, and then
I would say that we did have some problems we had to work out as far as handicap. So
You talking about here?
here, yeah, as far as the handicap. I know you would, and this is only for advanced voting, not for the regular voting. They would be at the stations. And I know it's your decision, but I do think that they're better equipped to handle what needs to be done. And with the handicap, I believe we had to open the string door in the back for the chairs to get in, and it was sort of an issue.
Now, let me ask a question. If we're gonna use transportation, then what does that look like? Because we definitely got to make sure. And then you have, because we're not MARTA, because people vote advance at their own time. And so we don't know what advance really is. And I do want to be a good steward over the money, but accessibility for all voters, even voters in Fairburn, is very important. So I think this is not something that we're gonna have to do permanently. I think this fix needs to be the fix that fixes it. We can't avoid it. It still has to be fixed. So we have some very unique voters here with some unique health issues, and Fairburn wants their services in Fairburn, and I get it. I went to the hub, I've been there, but you could get lost on the parking lot. It's huge. But I don't think we're gonna get away from this. Thank you to the county, but Fairburn has needs to meet for our constituents. So are we gonna sell the building?
No, ma'am, there are no plans to sell the building. Our intention is to address the issues which, as Ms. Chris explained, are really the adjacent building,
Okay.
because we've already put a new roof on the annex.
Okay,
So we just have to work with that adjacent property owner to resolve their issues that are affecting our building.
okay.
And let me also mention, oh, I'm sorry, you still got the floor, go ahead, Ms. Hudson.
No, I'm done.
That was me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, sir, then I'll speak after you.
So, in essence, every time we have a storm, we have water that goes in there, which means we have to go in and do our due diligence, so we don't have mold to start to grow in there and cause additional problems. Plus, on top of that, and I'm just, by memory, that wall that we have there, sooner or later, everybody knows what water does, it destroys.
Yep.
It destroys. So the way I was viewing this is that this is just for this year, the 2025 election period, early voting. And again, I do admit we do have handicap issues. You have, 4 slots right in front of the annex, for handicap 4 or 5?
Yes, sir, and it was access to the building, not the parking that was more of a concern.
Right.
And so we used the access at the rear of the building that better accommodated those who need special accommodations.
And I'm just making sure I cover all bases here. And when we had it at the senior center, that was an option, but that took away from the seniors being able to use that building, and that's why we went away from that. Is that correct?
That is my recollection. Yes, sir.
Okay. So as a temporary fix for this year early election season, that's why I think it would be very prudent of us to look at using that voting hub. But again, we also need to do our due diligence in transportation for those that would end up walking. And I know of many that walks from our senior citizens building behind the police station, walk over here just to vote. We have a nice population that believes in voting early, and they want their vote to count. And I want to ensure that we are able to ensure that their votes count if we're going to move.
Okay, and this one only takes in the general election and our runoff. It does not take in July. I think they're having some type of special something, so it doesn't cover that. Special
election?
Yeah.
We ain't doing that.
Okay, and just so a comment, I actually spoke with the registration and elections director, and as it relates to after the city clerk sent her an email, I actually coincidentally was in a meeting with her within the next hour, and I asked her just point blank as it relates to her concerns, and her concerns in this case was the access about like I said to the building, disability issues. And she said that became a real problem, concern for Fulton County government. And so the last thing I'm concerned about, yes, about the water coming in the building, but the last thing I needed is us making modifications for somebody to come around and have an accident. And we're more liable as a result of not using, like I said again, that was my biggest hurdle, Ms. Hudson, believe it or not, trying to figure out they're right here versus being safe in a minimum liability 3 miles away. So that was my biggest hurdle.
Okay, so I know you don't, so you're saying that, Mayor, that we should reconsider, reconsider just for this year? Is this permanent?
No, I think this is just this year.
Just for this year, right?
Sure.
Okay, so, Well, what would the motion be now?
I'd like to modify the motion.
Like, okay.
I'd like to modify
Okay.
the motion
Yeah,
to
okay.
use the voting hub for the early voting 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other comments by councilors?
Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. Listen, when you say money, it's over. When you say get sued, So, thank you.
I understand, absolutely. Seeing no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
Next item is the Finance Director's monthly report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members
Yes,
and
ma'am.
community. You received in your package report for December and January, periods 3 and 4. For the sake of time, I'm just going to review the January because it encompasses the December numbers as well, okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's get started with January. Yes, January.
She said she's just going to January.
Yes,
She
please.
said it encompasses.
All right. Did I get this thing wrong here? You got me? Okay. For the sake of time, I'll just hit the highlights. Okay. So January 2024, 2025 fiscal years, our revenues exceeded our expenditures by $7.8 million. Year to date, the general revenues received in $15.8 million, and expenditures we dispersed out $8.1 million. As of January, the city has collected 43.4% of its budgeted revenues and expensed 22% of their budget in expenses. As you can see here, this is a chart, a graph, showing what our unaudited fund balance was at the beginning of October 1st, 2024. It was at $22.3 million, and as of January 31st, we're at $30.15 million. This is just a statement of showing by department the expenditures that were expensed for the month and the year to date. Again, 43.36% has been expensed of our total budget. And as you can also see, we have our revenues, and this shows year to year over 2023, 2024. And you can see we're down just a little bit January this year versus last year. Again, here's expenditures by department. Now I'll move to our enterprise fund. City of Fairburn enterprise funds, as of January 2025, the revenues exceeded expenditures by $2.1 million. The revenues received totals was $8.4 million, and expenditures dispersed was $6.4. We collected 30.12% of our budgeted revenues and expensed 22.7% of our budget expenditures. Here, as you can see, I can't see that far, even with my glasses. Too small. As you can see here, our revenues, again, showing the 30.12%, as stormwater, water, sewer, stormwater, electric, and sanitation totals. Also, for revenues as well as expenditures. Our water and sewer the revenue has exceeded expenditures by $1.8 million. So the revenue with the hikes have done well. Stormwater, 282, has exceeded the revenues expenditures, but electric and sanitation is still running a little bit behind. But we're hoping that the new hike rates, the rates for utilities that will come in, were effective February 1st, will help with those. Here is a 2-year comparison of our revenues and expenditures. Our revenues are up by about $2 million, and our expenditures are up by a little bit of $1.3 million. Any questions?
Any members of council got any questions about this report?
No.
Nope. Seeing none, thank you so much.
Next item is the City Administrator's monthly report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to take just a brief moment to highlight a few things from January's report. First, I wanted to speak to a couple of issues that have come up in public comment in recent meetings. One was the Fairburn City Cemetery. Working with the city attorney and other departments, our initial due diligence has determined the history, of course, which I think is known by many, goes back to the 1800s. The property was originally deeded over by CSX and the city of Fairburn. The cemetery has been maintained, as we know, by the city for many years. However, the individual lots where family members are interned or buried are purchased and deeded to those families. So those families own those lots for their loved one's final resting place. The city does not own the individual lots. We're still doing due diligence and deed research because there's a lot of history there to identify as best we can who are the legal owners of each of those individual lots, but they were purchased by families, and so I did want to provide that update. Also, there was some comment in a couple of meetings in reference to when we had our bond approval recently by council. There's a document that comes along with that. It's about 100 pages long, but there's a reference in that document to something called conduit debt, and it's actually a reference to the Development Authority and some of the work that they've done over the years, specifically with Landmark. And the comment that was made in the meeting is that the taxpayers of Fairburn funded $6 million Landmark. And I wanted to correct that because that is not the case. There was no taxpayer dollars at all that went to Landmark Christian School. All of that was done through the Development Authority, which is a separate entity through a bond issuance. And so I just wanted to state that for the record, that no taxpayer dollars went to Landmark Christian School. On to the January report. One of the things that was mentioned earlier in the meeting, and I concur, the Utilities Department and all of our first responders did a tremendous job during the winter storm in January. And key in that was the implementation of Civic Ready, our emergency alert system, which has been working well. I want to thank the Communications Department and Jacqueline Howe for getting that up and running. It has been a key part of our response to a lot of city issues, but certainly during the winter storm. We've also enhanced and increased some youth and senior programming, both of which have been award-winning. We have added the Reimagined Chipper program and our comprehensive street sweeping initiative as well. Due to this council's approval, we are now adding Buttermilk Biscuit to our downtown, and that is helping to expand our downtown corridor. And interest is growing in the film industry in the city of Fairburn. As you know, we are surrounded by a lot of film entities in the immediate region. Our crime rates have been reducing year over year. That is the case again in January of this year. And our fire department is maintaining, as it has for the last several years, its ISO fire rating, the highest level of fire protection in the country, and one of the few agencies below I-20 in Fulton County that has an ISO 1 rating. As you heard earlier, the completion of Fire Station 23 is pending. We completed 24 earlier this year, and the design of the public safety facility is moving forward with a good pace. Also, as I'd like to mention as well, we have several planning efforts underway. The 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update, Councilwoman Hudson reminded our residents that there will be a meeting this Thursday. In reference to that, we want to encourage everyone to please come out and participate in this very important effort. There's also a citywide strategic planning effort as well as a zoning ordinance rewrite. We are working closely with communications. I know that's a lot of information for residents. We want to communicate as clearly as we can, take advantage of some synergies so that we can coordinate these planning efforts and not overwhelm people where they can't understand which meeting is which. And so we're focusing specifically on that and to make sure that we communicate clearly in that regard. Hopefully, there's been an opportunity to review the report that has been submitted as part of your packet, and I will pause there to see if there are any questions I can answer.
Mr. Council, does anyone have a question?
I have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Just want to follow up on, has the charter review been conducted?
It is underway with the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. They will be coming before council, I believe, in March to make their first presentation. They won't be completed in March, but that is being managed by the Carl Vinson Institute. Attorney Lori Brill, I believe, will be here for the meeting in March, which I believe is the 25th.
Okay, do we have a date for the council retreat?
We have a tentative date. We're checking facility availability, and I'll have a confirmation for that for you shortly.
Yeah, I know I'm about to take flight.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The ethics training, was that published? Is the ethics training that was supposed to occur? It was
tomorrow.
canceled, but is it gonna be tomorrow?
It's gonna be tomorrow. It's been published, it's been sent to the newspaper, and it's, posted at City Hall.
Okay, thank you. So I will be attending the Black History Celebration at Campbell Elementary on Thursday. I spoke with the principal and the parent liaison about parent engagement and participation with the comp plan. I think it would be a great idea to do two things to get participation. Is we can have something with a QR code that can go over to Campbell and to Global Impact, and as well have a QR station on Friday night, because we're gonna have a big event there, Black History, there as well.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have. Okay.
Thank you. At this point, I'll go to council. I'll go to council reports, since Ms. Hudson, since you already got the floor, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, there was one more thing. You can email me this, though. Recruitment for the steering committee. I had some concerns about that, and I got some phone calls. Residents wanted to know how was the process initiated, and, because I didn't know the process. And the publication of the flyer went out 7 hours before the meeting, and I got yelled at by some residents about that. So, yes, I got it. They time-stamped it and texted it to me.
Hold on one second.
I'll verify, Ms. Hudson.
Okay.
I believe it went out well
Ms.
before
Howe,
that.
Ms. Howe,
It
actually,
wasn't a public meeting. That steering committee meeting was specifically for the steering committee. The first public meeting is this Thursday.
So, back again, the recruitment of that, and I want to be succinct with what I say. And I attended that meeting, and they are traditional, the people that we see at the table. So we have to make sure that that recruitment process is clear, because residents were saying, and you had one that was here that said she did not know, unless, and the only way she knew it was because she bugged Ms. Brookins. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. She bugs Ms. Brookins to get here. And so that's been a concern in the community, that the timeliness of communication, the process, let it be clear. Because I was trying to look to give you some credit that we had a process in place, but I wasn't able to find it publicly.
Gotcha. Regarding the steering committee members, anyone who is interested in joining the steering committee just has to reach out to us, and we can add you to that listserv. Absolutely not a problem at all. Regarding opportunities to engage, we have a long process in between now and adoption, so there will be multiple opportunities for public meetings. You'll have a survey. They're doing individual one-on-ones. We reached out to the who's who, Mr. Brooks, who's here this evening, because he is probably one of those folks that always comes to the public meetings and has a lot of input. We provided his information and a lot of other stakeholders to make sure we're getting as many people as possible. So if there's any members of the public who would like to join the steering committee, you're welcome to do so. It's only for meetings. If you would like to be contacted individually, you can always come to my office. We can go over the entire process with you to make sure that anyone who is interested, this is the opportunity to do so. This is the easiest part of making sure that whatever policies, whatever aspirations that you have, if we can make sure that it's a part of this conversation, it makes those conversations when developers come to the table a lot easier, because we understand what the vision and the plan is and what the expectation is from the community.
I agree. And so I'm gonna take my 2 minutes. I ain't gonna take 2 minutes, but I wanna say to the Campbell Elementary School, thank you so much for inviting me to the Valentine Day reading to the students. I saw some of our Fairburn PD there. Some of them had 5 classrooms that they had to cover. I did my one and got it out the door. So it felt really good making that connection and knowing that Campbell Elementary wants to see us involved and engaged there. And as I stated, I'll be there on Thursday night with the Black History program, and invite our community to come out and support our schools. Education is it is our primary focus, and that's how we get the development that we need, the economic development, educating. Many of you may not know that there's a push to increase our literacy, and I would like for our staff to begin to think about what does that look like for the city of Fairburn here with the 2 schools that are zoned in our city, because we want to build up a society in Fairburn that is well educated and that can contribute. And I think that we have the resources in place to do that, whether there's partnerships, collab, networks, whatever, grant writing to identify funding, hint, hint, your councilwoman writes grants. And so we want to get on the ball with that. The last thing is to our residents, come out and celebrate with us for Black History. I want to see this government acknowledge the history in its governance. We had the first African-American mayor, Mayor Avery, elected to this government, as well as the first African-American female who is an unsung hero. And I want to say that we need to do our due diligence, and we need to make sure that we address highlighting the successes of that leadership and their contributions to this city. That is very important, that we don't alienate or that we just absolutely just disregard the service. Every member that has sat on this council has been very diligent in serving. And so I want to see the highlight of Mayor Avery as the first Black mayor and Elizabeth Carr Hurst as the first Black female mayor. Somewhere this year or next year, whatever, we got to do better. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. And next, I'll go Mr. Heath.
No comment.
Okay. Mr. James.
No comment, man.
Okay, Mr. Smallwood.
No comment.
Okay, and I just want to mention, can I just clarify that South Fulton Municipal Association is Thursday? Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make
It is
sure.
Thursday.
I have a
We host it next month.
Yeah, and Fairburn hosts it in March. I was just trying to make sure there's a conflict between what I wanted to do Thursday and in my efforts to support another municipality, so they'll support us next month. I want to also mention, I just want to commend Commissioner Rod Pitts on a phenomenal State of the County address that I went to. Must have had close to 400 plus people there. Just an awesome report as relates to the things and the programs that the cities, in conjunction with the county, is actually doing. Want to commend Mr. Clement Leon and we. McLeod. He called him Mr. McLeod in this case. Clement, I just called him Clement in this case, that's retiring after 17 years working with the city of Fairburn. And so I want to just commend him publicly for a job well done out of the General Services Department. Again, you heard Ms. Hudson already mention our Black History Program. I believe that's this Friday. And so with that being said, municipal government meeting, okay, so let me make sure, okay, I got it all. Okay, with that being said, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mayor.
Evening, everyone. Safe,
The
be
attorney.
safe, and until next
It was 2022, the chief judge shall be appointed by the majority vote of the city council for a term of 4 years or until her successor has been appointed. It was changed in 2022 for 4 years.
So I guess what happened last year?
She probably just came.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
The only person that's appointed. See you later, Mayor.
Oh, yes, sir.
I was just making sure. All right.
All right. So you can kill the attorney. Our attorney.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, so no, don't contact the attorney.
You don't have to contact the attorney for that.
Oh, okay, yes,
We
ma'am.
don't have to pay her.
Okay. That's right. You have to pay her every time we get something.
You need to get some rest.
Thank you so much.
I will take this.